Chapter 2368. The faces of the charming woman and the others sank, not daring to breathe. This was the #1 heaven ruler of the southern region. Qin Yangzi had the strength of the forgetting word state, but he was as insignificant as an ant in the hands of the lonely emperor. With just a single word, he could incinerate them into ashes. What made them feel even more suffocated was that the lonely emperor had no intention of leaving after killing Qin Yangzi, who had stolen his sister's body. He stood with his back to the crowd, exuding an unusually powerful pressure. The charming woman gulped down a mouthful of saliva and said, "Lonely Emperor, we didn't touch your younger sister's remains, I hope you can understand." The other two guests stared at the lonely emperor's back, as if they were prisoners waiting for the judge to decide their fate. "You have indeed not done it, but you have thought about it." The lonely emperor's words were like a cold iron sword, piercing into their hearts and chilling them. The lonely emperor turned around and looked at Su Yu, the charming woman, and the other two guests. He said slowly, "The remains of the dragon clan are not to be trespassed. Those who violate them will be killed." The surrounding air suddenly heated up, and there were faint sparks of fire flying about. The charming woman's heart sank. She shouted, "Everyone, don't hold on to your wishful thinking anymore. Let's attack together." "Alright. That's the only way." The other two guests did not hold on to their wishful thinking either. They were prepared to face the lonely emperor head-on. "What about you?" The charming woman looked at Su Yu solemnly. Su Yu was silent. He had actually been wronged, as he had never thought of fighting for the remains of the young dragon. However, the lonely emperor would not believe a word of his explanation, would he? "Count me in," Su Yu said slowly, staring at the tall figure in front of him. The #1 expert of the dragon clan? He was probably the only dragon Su Yu had ever encountered. The epic-making dragon, world annihilation dragon, evil dragon, deity fire dragon, and even Princess Linglong should be considered the previous generation of the dragon clan. They were either imprisoned or left with a remnant soul, struggling at death's door. To think that one day Su Yu would still encounter the real dragon clan. A bunch of ants. The lonely emperor looked down at them indifferently, naturally releasing a disdainful and domineering aura. The lonely emperor crossed his arms in front of his chest, a layer of air circulating around his body. The airflow instantly seeped out of his body and turned into the form of the lonely emperor. It then split into 4 and rushed towards the 4 of them. "Be careful!" the charming woman shouted, and a large number of black-shelled insects flew out from her wide sleeves. The densely packed insects covered his entire body to resist the incoming airflow. However, as soon as the airflow touched them, the insects were shredded into pieces. The charming woman was no match for him. She was sent flying by the airflow and crashed onto the ground. She died on the spot. The situation of the other two guests wasn't much better. Half of their bodies were directly blasted into pieces, and they screamed in pain. Only Su Yu was slightly better off. When the Qi current arrived, Shao Qin calmly summoned his small world. The Qi current was like a clay ox entering the ocean, dissolving into nothingness. The lonely emperor looked at Su Yu in surprise. "You have some skills." However, Su Yu did not feel any sense of praise from his words. The other party was fighting 1 against 4, and he had even used a trace of his aura to injure the enemy, causing 1 death and 2 injuries. It was so powerful that it made people gasp in admiration. "However, it ends here," the lone emperor said calmly. Heavenly flames! Bang! The space within the tent was suddenly set ablaze. It was the terrifying fire of the dragon's breath. In an instant, everything within the tent was burnt to a crisp. A golden dragon-shaped light shield was revealed. Inside the light shield, they were like turtles trapped in a jar, engulfed by the raging flames. The other two guests were unwilling to sit still and wait for death. They summoned their own Taoist artifacts and domains. However, as soon as they were summoned, they were melted by the dragon's breath. Their Taoist bodies began to suffer serious burns. Little brother, hurry up. The two guests were shocked. They desperately summoned the rest of their treasures to resist the terrifying dragon's breath. At the same time, they urged Suyu to act quickly. Suyu nodded and said, "All right, watch me." As soon as he finished speaking, Suyu suddenly turned around and rushed to the other side of the light shield. His speedy figure stirred up a whirlwind, brushing past the corpse of the charming woman on the ground and turning it into shreds. Of course, this was not caused by Suyu's movement technique. It was because the corpse of the charming woman was fake. Under the gray robe there were worms. The real charming woman had already burrowed into the ground under the cover of the worms. She had opened a passage in the light shield from the ground. Nothing could hide from Suyu's transparent eye. The reason he had not moved was because he had been waiting for this moment. The seductive woman on the ground was covered with precious spirit insects. She had sacrificed so many spiritual worms so that she could have a chance to open a passage in this extremely tough and dangerous light shield. Unexpectedly, just as she was about to succeed, Suyu rushed over. The charming woman was furious. "Stop him!" An unexpected scene occurred. The two guests had abandoned the lonely emperor and turned to hold Suyu back. They said numbly, "Your Excellency, why don't you stay with us and resist the lonely emperor together?" At this point, everyone could see that the two guests had long been controlled by the charming woman's soul. On the surface, they seemed to have a sense of self, but in fact, they were already the people of the charming woman. Moreover, the charming woman and the two guests had been frantically raising the price of the dragon's body. Now, it seemed that they were deliberately driving up the price. They were in cahoots with Qin Yangzi. Their targets were Suyu and the lonely emperor, the two real guests. Unfortunately, they had never dreamed that one of the guests was the lonely emperor himself. It was laughable that the charming woman had secretly ordered the two guests to deal with the lonely emperor with Suyu, just to buy time for her to escape. "Even if you want to make use of me, you should first look at yourself." Suyu snorted coldly and shouted, "Space replacement." What was replaced was not the position of Suyu and the charming woman. Instead, the light shield in front of Suyu was replaced by the opening that the charming woman had dug out. The charming woman did not understand what was going on. The opening that she had painstakingly dug out was suddenly replaced by an intact light shield. She almost crashed into it and was burned alive. On the other hand, the area in front of Suyu had been replaced by a gap. Without hesitation, Suyu leaped up and prepared to leave through the gap. However, before leaving, Suyu's eyes flashed with a wine-red light. Qin Yangzi's space storage device fell into Suyu's hands. There were 200 drops of great venerable realm dragon blood in it. How could he miss it? With this dragon blood, not only would the dragon blood he had lost be replenished, but it would also be greatly increased. The power of the heavenly dragon body that he could display would be even greater. However, the person that the lonely emperor paid the most attention to was Suyu, the only person who could remain unscathed under the lonely emperor's aura. Moon Cage. The lonely emperor put his palms together and silently recited the incantation. An ancient aura filled the air within the light shield. The aura rapidly converged, forming a 10-foot moon. Under the illumination of the moonlight, the gap in the light shield immediately closed up. Suyu's leaping figure had no choice but to stop immediately. His expression changed again and again. Pop! The charming woman emerged from the ground. Looking at the gap that had been restored, she almost lost her temper. If she could, the charming woman really wanted to strangle Suyu to death. She could have successfully escaped, but now that she had been discovered by the lonely emperor, she had nowhere to go. Suyu sighed, turned around, and looked at the lonely emperor solemnly. "I have no choice but to fight." Swoosh! A small stick the size of a rolling pin appeared in his palm. It spun in his palm and grew to a length of 10 feet. The charming woman was furious, but she had no choice but to fight the lonely emperor. 100 worms pass. She took out a small black pot, opened it, and poured the contents onto the ground. Suddenly, ferocious worms crawled out of the pot. Every worm's cultivation level was no lower than a half-path master. If thousands of worms attacked at the same time, one could imagine how terrifying their power would be. The thousands of worms turned into a black tide and surged toward the lonely emperor. The lonely emperor's eyes were calm. "They are just worms," he snorted, and a purer dragon breath than before gushed out of his nostrils. In an instant, more than half of the worms on the ground were burned to death. The rest of the worms took the opportunity to crawl onto his body and gnaw at him. The lonely emperor's eyes were filled with disdain. A layer of inky black dragon scales appeared on the surface of his body. Creak, creak, the sound of metal scraping against each other could be heard. The swarm of black worms bit into the dragon's scales, creating sparks. However, they could do nothing to the dragon scales. Scram! The lonely emperor's body shook, and all the black worms on his body were shaken off. They turned into hidden weapons and shot out in all directions. When they hit the light shield, it shook violently as if it was about to shatter. The charming woman was also hit by a flying worm, and a bloody hole was punched through her abdomen. She grimaced in pain. However, most of the worms were aimed at Suyu. Suyu flipped his wrist and stuck the heaven-destroying rod in front of him. He secretly instilled the desolate power into it. Enlarge! The heaven-destroying rod that was 10 feet long suddenly became 5 feet thick, and it blocked in front of Suyu. Clang! A series of heavy crashing sounds reverberated from the heaven-exterminating rod as hundreds of bugs smashed onto the heaven-exterminating rod. With each collision, the heaven-destroying rod trembled. Suyu's hand that was holding the heaven-destroying rod was in extreme pain. He was secretly surprised. As the lonely emperor of the Dragon Clan, his physique was invincible among his peers. Unless Suyu could refine more than 200 drops of dragon blood and successfully advance the heavenly dragon cultivation body to a higher level, he would still be on par with the lonely emperor. "It's my turn." After blocking the many worms, Suyu's eyes flashed with a strange light. He shrunk the heaven-destroying rod to an ordinary thickness, then carried it and pounced on the lonely emperor. Child's play. The lonely emperor did not take it seriously. His arms were still crossed in front of his chest as he roared at Suyu. Instantly, a majestic dragon might that suppressed all living beings in the world swept out. Although Suyu was prepared, he could not avoid it. Space collapse. Suyu's face was calm. He released the space domain, causing the space between him and the lonely emperor to collapse like a bottomless abyss. The roar of the dragon poured into it. Suyu was unaffected, and the speed of the rod did not slow down. At this point, the lonely emperor finally put down his right hand and grabbed the top of his head. With his invincible physique, once caught, Suyu wouldn't be able to hurt him. Even the heaven-destroying rod would be snatched away. However, just as the heaven-destroying rod was about to hit the top of his head, a strange scene appeared. Chapter 2369. The heaven-exterminating rod suddenly twisted. The perfectly straight rod bent like a noodle and pointed at the lone emperor's back. The lone emperor was caught off guard and was struck by the staff. Clang! An intense sound of metal clashing could be heard. The lone emperor had to bear the heavy force, and 3 of the scales on his back had been smashed off. His body staggered forward from the impact, and he threw himself at Suyu. A hint of anger appeared on the arrogant lone emperor's face. He had regarded Suyu as an ant, and he had never expected that he would be injured by an ant. However, since he was the #1 prodigy of the southern region, he naturally had rich combat experience. Not only did he react immediately, but he also launched an attack at Suyu. Extreme Dragon Breath. He snorted through his nostrils, and a mysterious blue dragon breath was spat out. This dragon breath was terrifying, several times more powerful than the dragon breath it had spouted before. Fortunately, since Suyu had chosen to fight, he must have been well prepared for the combination of his moves. 3 Zhang's Small World. A mysterious small world appeared on the surface of his body once again, and it absorbed all of the azure flames. However, unlike last time, the interior of the small world was clearly much hotter. If the temperature of the dragon breath was any higher, the small world might not be able to withstand it. This move again? The lone emperor was really surprised. The dragon breath that he had used previously was just an ordinary dragon breath. It was not a big deal for the other party to be able to dispel it invisibly. However, the current dragon breath was something that even a Tao master at the Forgetting Words realm could not resist at all. Even fish dragon Tao lords could only barely resist it. What was wrong with the ant in front of him? Before he could take any further action, he felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. The end of the heaven-destroying rod in Su Yu's hand was also distorted. The end of the staff curved and struck the abdomen. Rub, rub, rub. Just as the lone emperor regained his balance, he was pushed back by the heaven-exterminating staff. Feeling the searing pain coming from his back and abdomen, the lone emperor's eyes finally revealed a trace of anger. I, the lone emperor, have been invincible all my life. It's rare for me to be hit twice in a row. Alright, then I'll use my true abilities to show my respect to you. The lone emperor let out a long sigh, and the black scales on the surface of his body all stood up as if they were breathing. Tyrant Dragon Tao Annihilating Fist. The lone emperor punched out. Tens of thousands of dragons roared within his fist, rolling like thunder. The entire barrier shook violently, as if it was about to shatter. The 30-foot small world on the surface of Su Yu's body flickered and was on the verge of shattering under the supreme fist power. If you can survive my punch, I'll admit defeat. This punch was one of the lone emperor's strongest punches. Even in the celestial being realm, only experts in the mid to late stages could withstand it. An early stage celestial being realm Daolord would die upon contact. Su Yu's eyes were cold. If he took out the divine nine-dragon cauldron, he was confident that he could withstand it. But there was no need. Grow! All of a sudden, Su Yu shouted. The two ends of the heaven-destroying rod had extended to both sides and reached the end of the light shield. If it was just a little longer, it would be able to pierce through the light barrier. And with this shout, the heaven-exterminating rod finally grew longer and became incomparably heavy. The two sides of the heaven-exterminating rod immediately pierced a hole on each side of the light barrier. At the same time, due to the sudden increase in the weight of the heaven-exterminating rod, it kept falling down, tearing a long crack in the hole. Before the lonely emperor's punch could land, Su Yu folded the space and turned into a speck of dust. He quickly drifted out of the narrow crack. It turned out that this was Su Yu's real purpose. There was no need for him to fight to the death with the lonely emperor. They had neither enmity nor resentment. Therefore, his intention from the beginning was to use the heaven-exterminating rod to open a hole in the light barrier. He managed to escape, and the charming woman was quick to react. She dismembered herself into a dense mass of insects and burrowed out of the crack on the other side. After leaving, she transformed into a swarm of insects and hurriedly escaped. The lonely emperor's punch missed, and he only killed the two guests who couldn't escape in time. At the same time, the entire light barrier could not withstand the lonely emperor's blow and was completely shattered. The remaining power of the punch swept out in all directions, causing the entire underground market to collapse. Countless underground merchants and buyers in the vicinity were killed by that one punch. All of a sudden, the entire underground market was in a state of panic. All the martial artists screamed and scrambled to escape. In the crowd, Su Yu removed his disguise, put away the heaven-exterminating rod, and sneaked out of the crowd. The lonely emperor was furious. "Come out and fight me one-on-one if you have the guts." Su Yu, who had already escaped to the surface, heard the roars and shouts coming from underground. He shook his head in amusement. "Do you think I'm a fool? I've already taken advantage of you. Why should I stay and fight you?" He weighed Qin Yangzi's storage artifact in his hand and returned to the inn, satisfied. After returning, Su Yu immediately went into seclusion. For safety's sake, he set up several layers of isolation formations outside the house to prevent the scent of the dragon blood from drifting out and attracting the lonely emperor. After making all the preparations, Su Yu took out the jade bottle and stared at the 200 drops of extremely pure great venerable realm dragon blood inside. He eagerly took out a drop and merged it into his bloodstream on the spot. In an instant, the blood in Su Yu's body was tumbling violently like boiling water. The flow of qi and blood in his body had reached an unimaginable speed. Su Yu felt as if there was a ferocious beast running wildly through his meridians, causing him a stinging pain all over his body. The most amazing thing was that wisps of flames were being born from his pores. It was the dragon's breath. Hiss! Su Yu's mouth twitched in pain. That's only one drop of blood. However, the more it was like this, the more excited Su Yu became. Perhaps, after completely refining this blood, his improvement would be beyond imagination. After taking a deep breath, Su Yu endured the excruciating pain and refined the dragon blood drop by drop. 2 days later, Su Yu's blood was boiling, and a layer of light blue dragon's breath flames burned on the surface of his body. The dragon's roar filled his body, and he was inexplicably excited. His eyes turned golden. Everything in sight was ignited by the dragon's breath and turned into ashes. In the secret chamber, apart from the 4 walls, all the other objects on display had been reduced to dust. Even the clothes on Su Yu's body were not spared, and were burned to nothing. The temperature in the secret chamber was exceptionally high because of the high temperature emanating from Su Yu's body. A path master of the initial path would not last more than 2 hours under such a high temperature before being roasted into human jerky. And this was because Su Yu had not yet displayed the heavenly dragon body. If he did, he would probably be even more powerful than before. The power of the great venerable realm dragonblood is indeed beyond my expectations. Su Yu was secretly surprised. His current physical strength, even without displaying the heavenly dragon body, was equivalent to the later stage of the celestial realm. If he displayed it, he would probably reach the early stage of the fish dragon realm. With such a physical strength alone, he could defeat anyone in the same realm. Even the lonely emperor, who was known for his physical strength, could fight for several rounds without being at a disadvantage. Suddenly, Su Yu's heart moved, and he took out the heaven-destroying rod again. Grow! He instilled the desolate power into it, and it became 10 feet long. The heaven-destroying rod, which had previously felt incomparably heavy, now felt light in his hand. Grow more! When it was 30 feet long, Su Yu finally felt a little heavy, but he could still wield it freely. With such a physique, coupled with the weight of the heaven-destroying rod, I'm afraid even an early-stage master of the fish dragon realm would have a headache if he encountered it, right? Su Yu commented. Su Yu's trip to the underground market had been fruitful, and he was quite satisfied. After finishing his training, Su Yu left the place of isolation. The snake gallbladder has been concocted. How should I convince Xiener to drink it? Su Yu began to think. With his current relationship with Qin Xiener, especially in a situation where Xiener had misunderstood him, would Qin Xiener drink anything he gave her? Elder, you have come out, the divine flaming demonic woman, who was waiting outside the secret chamber, said respectfully. Su Yu collected his thoughts and said, Yes, what's the matter? The divine flaming demonic woman shook her head lightly. It's nothing serious. It's just that the lonely emperor of the dragon clan appeared in the shore civilization for some unknown reason and started a massacre. Fortunately, the master of the shore civilization intervened and chased him away. So, Su Yu said calmly, do you need to report to me about a mere little dragon? The divine flaming demonic woman said, Elder, you are so powerful that you don't care about a little dragon. However, I heard that he lost the essence blood of the black dragon emperor here. Based on the Black Dragon Emperor's temperament, he won't let this go easily. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. Could those 200 drops of blood have come from the current Dragon Emperor? But so what? He even held the Dragon Clan's most precious treasure, the Royal Power Dragon Sword, in his hands. So what if he took away 200 drops of blood? The Black Dragon Emperor? If he was from the shore civilization, I would crush him to death right now. Su Yu said calmly. Disturbing my peace is a crime punishable by death. The divine flaming demonic woman nodded repeatedly. In her heart, she thought, only the elder could say something like crushing the Black Dragon Emperor to death. That was an existence that could possibly surpass the Yellow Path Master. She did not doubt Su Yu's words. She had complete faith in the elder's abilities. By the way, Elder, some of the disciples of the South Pole civilization seem to be trying to find out where we are staying. Should we intervene? The divine flaming demonic woman said. If necessary, I can chase them away. The South Pole civilization? Su Yu's first instinct was that they were coming for him. No need, Su Yu said calmly. If they were coming for him, it must be because of Qin Xianer. Su Yu had not forgotten the look that the person called Hai Qingxiao had given him before he left. Since it was related to Xianer, Su Yu hoped to resolve it himself, rather than relying on the divine flaming demonic woman. They are just a bunch of bugs. Why bother? As Su Yu spoke, he suddenly pinched his fingers together and made some calculations. He then said, Yes, I've calculated that my disciple, Su Yu, will arrive at the shore civilization in the near future. If he runs into trouble and I'm in seclusion, you guys should lend a hand. The divine flaming demonic woman was overjoyed. Yes, Elder. She could not wait to help the elder. At the same time, she was extremely curious about what kind of disciple the elder had taught would be like. He must be from an upper-class clan, right? Perhaps even one of the top-class clans. After all, with the elder's arrogance, a low-class clan would not be able to catch his eye and become his disciple. I'm going out for a while, Su Yu said, then left the inn alone. Arriving at a deserted area, Su Yu shed the lightning on his body, revealing his original appearance. He did not hide his tracks. Instead, he swaggered through the market. Not long after, Su Yu faintly felt several strange gazes sweeping over him. Chapter 2370. He smiled. That's fine. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to see Xianer. You came at the right time. He had already thought of a way to see Qin Xianer. Pretending not to notice the people following him, Su Yu went to a remote manor in the suburbs and rented it at a high price. He put up a sign outside the manor. Trash is not allowed to enter. Otherwise, you will all be drowned in the latrine. Then, he waited in the manor leisurely. In just a few hours, a sneaky middle-aged man led 3 young men in. The leader was Hai Qingxiao, and the 2 behind him were his 2 senior brothers, Du Mingtang and Yuan Chun. Within 3 days, they had put up a bounty to find Su Yu's whereabouts in this civilization. As soon as Su Yu left the inn, he was immediately discovered by someone who informed the 3 of them. The 3 of them stood outside the manor, looking at the sign that had obviously just been put up. They could not help but sneer. What an arrogant person! Du Mingtang said disdainfully. Perhaps in his eyes, those who are inferior to him are all trash. But in our eyes, isn't he also trash? Yuan Chun did not care. He is arrogant and does not know the immensity of heaven and earth. He does not even understand that there is always someone better out there. His character and intelligence are inferior to others. I really don't understand why junior sister Qin would like such a person. What nonsense are you talking about? Can't we just go in and meet him? Hai Qingxiao's face was cold as he ignored the sign and walked in. They quickly sensed the aura of a living creature in the courtyard of the manor. It was Su Yu. The 3 of them walked over quickly and saw Su Yu leisurely feeding the small fishes in the pond. Oh, you are quite free, Hai Qingxiao said mockingly. He wanted to see any surprise or panic on Su Yu's face. However, Su Yu did not even turn his head. He continued feeding the fishes with great interest. He said calmly, "If you are not blind, you should be able to see the sign outside the manor. I have already said that trash is not allowed to enter. You are really brave." Hai Qingxiao sneered. "I think you are the one with the courage. You are still so calm even after seeing me. I am afraid you are just putting on an act, but your heart is actually beating like a drum." As a disciple of the Antarctic civilization, Hai Qingxiao had the qualifications to say such words. Of course, in front of Su Yu, he didn't even have the qualifications to make Su Yu's hair tremble, let alone make his heart pound. "Who are you? Is it famous? Do I have to know you?" Su Yu put down the fish food and tilted his head to look at him. These words choked Hai Qingxiao's heart. Indeed, it was the South Sea civilization that was famous, not him, Hai Qingxiao. Amongst the numerous disciples of the South Pole Immortal One, he could only be considered to be at the bottom, and he couldn't be ranked at all. Seeing that Su Yu had hit the nail on the head, Hai Qingxiao's face was filled with anger. "Humph! You don't know how to appreciate favors. Then, I can't be bothered to be polite with you." Su Yu shook his head. It was as if they had ever been polite to him. He came uninvited and was overbearing. How could he be courteous at all? "I'll give you 3 options." Hai Qingxiao held up 3 fingers. "First, write a letter of guarantee that you will never see Qin Xianer again. Otherwise, you will be struck by lightning and die without a burial. At the same time, give each of us 10 million Tao coins as compensation." This manor was not cheap. Even renting it showed Su Yu's extraordinary wealth. Hai Qingxiao added a condition for extortion at the last minute. "Second, take a blow from each of us. It's up to you whether or not you want to retaliate." He was treating Su Yu like a weakling that he could bully at will. "Third, kowtow to each of us 100 times. Every time you kowtow, you have to scold yourself for being a toad eating swan meat." After stating the 3 options, Hai Qingxiao crossed his arms and looked at Su Yu with a cold smile. Du Mingtang frowned slightly. "Junior Hai, aren't you being too kind? Is this the price you have to pay for encroaching on the fairy sister of the South Pole Immortal Palace?" Yuan Chun was also extremely dissatisfied. "Junior Hai, you are still not ruthless enough. To deal with such a person, you can only use force to strike fear into his heart and body." The 2 of them had wanted to see how much progress the other had made in their abilities, and had used Su Yu as a target. Hai Qingxiao had made his own decisions. If Su Yu chose to apologize or kowtow to Hai Qingxiao, wouldn't he have come here for nothing? Hence, the 2 of them were very dissatisfied. Hai Qingxiao said, "We are the disciples of the South Pole Immortal One after all. We still have to pay attention to our identities. If people find out about our misdeeds, it will tarnish our master's reputation." Since he had mentioned the South Pole Immortal One, Du Mingtang and Yuan Chun had nothing to say. The 2 of them looked at Su Yu with unfriendly gazes as if to say, "Count yourself lucky to have escaped this calamity. Which of the 3 options do you think is the most suitable?" Hai Qingxiao released his state of forgetting words and slowly pressured Su Yu. As long as Su Yu wasn't stupid, he should know what to choose. "The second option." Su Yu smiled lightly. The 3 of them were stunned. Su Yu had actually taken the initiative to take a blow from each of them? Was he crazy? An ordinary half-step Dao master couldn't even take a blow from one of their fingers. They would usually be stabbed to death by a single finger. Moreover, there were 3 of them. Even if they were smashed to pieces, they wouldn't be able to take a blow from each of them. "Are you sure?" In fact, Hai Qingxiao had hoped that Su Yu would choose the 3rd option. He wanted Su Yu to kowtow and apologize, and scold him for being a toad lusting after swan meat. If he showed this video to Qin Xianer, no matter how special Qin Xianer's feelings for him were, they would all be wiped clean by this cowardly performance. "I don't talk nonsense," Su Yu said firmly. Hai Qingxiao's eyes slowly narrowed, and his tone became sinister. You chose it yourself. Don't blame me for not giving you any other options. On the other hand, Du Mingtang and Yuan Chen were secretly delighted. Du Mingtang chuckled. Who's going first? Yuan Chen volunteered and laughed strangely. I think we should give the first chance to junior high. Of course I have no objections, Du Mingtang agreed happily. Hai Qingxiao's eyes were cold. All right, if I go first, you two might not have the chance to practice as a target. Du Mingtang and Yuan Chen didn't care. Junior high, please don't stand on ceremony. Where did a half-step Dao master get the courage to take a blow from 3 Dao masters of forgetting words? He must have his own strong backing. Hence, the two of them weren't worried that Hai Qingxiao could finish him off with a single blow. Hai Qingxiao understood their intentions, and suddenly felt annoyed at being looked down upon. He bared his teeth. All right, then please wait and see. Su, are you ready? Hai Qingxiao said. You can resist however you want, I don't mind. However, Su Yu only shrugged. I won't resist. He really didn't need to resist against such a small fry. Haha, looks like you are very confident in your defense. Hai Qingxiao laughed mockingly, then pointed a finger at him. Even though he was in the air, Hai Qingxiao didn't hold back much. A solid finger, 1,000 feet long, stabbed toward Su Yu's body. Du Mingtang and Yuan Chen looked on coldly from the side, secretly surprised. Junior High has improved a lot in the Southern Sea Wasteland. He has already broken through from the early stage of forgetting words to the middle stage. I wonder if that kid can hold on. Clang. The scene of Su Yu being instantly crushed into a pile of minced meat did not occur. Instead, a strange clanging sound could be heard. Su Yu was standing at his original spot, not moving an inch. The finger energy that he had struck out was like an itch. When it collided with Su Yu's body, it was immediately dispersed. Du Mingtang and Yuan Chen, who were watching the battle, exclaimed in surprise. They had considered that Su Yu would indeed have a defensive item. However, they weren't sure if he could withstand a blow from junior high. The result was beyond their expectations. Not only did he withstand it, but he did so with ease. Even Hai Qingxiao himself was stunned, but when he heard the bewilderment of his 2 senior brothers, he immediately felt that he had lost a great deal of face. Unable to put down his pride, he shouted, "What kind of defensive artifact did you use?" Su Yu said calmly, "I didn't. If you saw it, you could tell me." Hai Qingxiao couldn't believe that a half-step Dao master could withstand a blow from a middle-stage forgetting words martial artist like him without using a defensive treasure. Child's play, Hai Qingxiao said angrily. Yuan Chen was afraid that Hai Qingxiao would attack again and kill Su Yu. He said hurriedly, "We agreed that we would take 1 blow each. We, the disciples of the Southern Sea civilization, must be honest. Junior High, please step back. Don't break the promise." Hai Qingxiao retreated to the side reluctantly and looked at his 2 senior brothers. "Which one of you will go first?" "I'll do it." Du Mingtang looked a little helpless. It seemed like the 2 of them had already agreed that Du Mingtang would attack first. Du Mingtang walked over and looked at Su Yu with a smile. "I'm sorry. You can attack as you wish. It's all right." Then, he released his aura. It had reached the later stage of forgetting words. Hai Qingxiao's pupils shrank, and Yuan Chen's expression changed slightly. Du Mingtang had also gained a lot from his trip to the great wilderness of the Southern Sea. Du Mingtang became a little more serious. He released his domain. It was a blank blue sky. The clouds in the sky gathered and scattered, and were suddenly torn apart by something. His domain was neither white clouds nor blue sky. It was wind. Whoosh, a formless gale swept past, cutting everything in its path. Hai Qingxiao smiled at Yuan Chen. "Senior brother Yuan, you don't have a chance." Yuan Chen sighed silently. He also felt that he didn't have a chance. Even he would find it difficult to resist such a domain, let alone Su Yu. No matter how strong a defensive treasure was, it would be useless. Clang, however, A strange sound of metal colliding entered their ears. Looking up, they saw that Su Yu was still standing motionless in his original position, while Du Mingtong's wind domain had dissipated. Du Mingtong's face stiffened. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Hai Qingxiao's failure was partly due to his carelessness and underestimation of his opponent. However, he had prepared seriously, so why couldn't he do anything to this person? Yuan Chen's eyes shone brightly as he praised, "Amazing! You can actually take a blow from senior brother. Do watch me next." Chapter 2371. Du Mingtang took a few steps back unwillingly. He stared at Su Yu and sized him up. At the same time, Hai Qingxiao's eyes flashed with a strange light. "Brat, to be able to withstand a move from my senior brother and junior brother, honestly speaking, you're quite formidable." Yuan Chen sighed in admiration. "However, since you've met me, perhaps you should say goodbye." Bang! The surface of his body rumbled like tidewater, while thick Daolord energy surged out from within him. Du Mingtang and Hai Qingxiao were both shocked. Complete realm of forgetting words. Initially, Du Mingtang and Yuan Chen's cultivation was the same. However, in the trip to the Southern Sea Desolate, the latter's harvest was far greater than the former. "Haha, leave this brat to me." Yuan Chen took out a round wheel. This item was Yuan Chen's Dao artifact. With his current cultivation base, one could imagine how powerful it was. Even if Du Mingtang and Hai Qingxiao worked together, they still wouldn't be a match for him. "Go!" Yuan Chen displayed the round wheel, which immediately produced tens of thousands of sharp blades, all of which were densely packed together as they flew toward Su Yu. Su Yu had nowhere to run, and he was engulfed by the countless blades' trajectories. Theoretically speaking, he should have been torn to pieces. However, a familiar voice rang out mercilessly. Clang! Another sound of metal clashing could be heard. Yuan Chen's wheel was directly sent flying. The tens of thousands of tracks vanished in an instant. How is this possible? Yuan Chen froze on the spot as he stared in disbelief at the Dao artifact that had bounced back. Du Mingli and Hai Qingxiao were both shocked. How was this possible? Even a Dao weapon that was activated with all its might at the great perfection of the forgetting words state could not hurt this person at all? What kind of defensive magic treasure was able to block such an attack? At this moment, Su Yu casually dusted off his clothes and calmly said, "One strike from each of them, and I managed to withstand it." To be honest, it wasn't that great. The faces of the three of them alternated between green and red. They had arrogantly come to Su Yu's door, and they had taken the initiative to attack Su Yu. They had even said that Su Yu could resist at will. In the end, Su Yu didn't even resist. They couldn't do anything to him. This was like slapping himself in the face. Furthermore, it was the heavy kind. Hai Qingxiao flew into a rage out of humiliation. "What are you trying to do by relying on a top-grade defensive treasure? As martial artists, we should rely on ourselves, not some random magic weapon." Yes. Du Mingtang also felt embarrassed, so he said righteously, "One's own body is the foundation, and magical weapons are the side branches. If you put the cart before the horse, it will be difficult for you to go far in martial arts." Yuan Chen even criticized, "I've said it before, your character is really bad." Su Yu looked up to the sky and laughed as he listened to them defend themselves one after another. "All of you are exalted Daolords at the Forgetful Realm, yet you don't allow a half-step Daolord to use defensive treasures when fighting him?" Su Yu laughed and asked, "Are you scolding yourselves? Are you scolding yourselves? Besides, which eye of yours saw that I was using a defensive magical equipment? The so-called prodigy of the South Sea civilization was truly better than hearing about him in person." The trio's faces turned red as they felt extremely humiliated. Hai Qingxiao stared at Su Yu, his eyes glowing with greed. He thought to himself, "This lad must be wearing a high-grade defensive treasure. Otherwise, how could it have withstood our attacks? If I can seize it and use it to aid me, wouldn't my strength improve greatly?" Du Mingtang and Yuan Chen also had the same idea. The two of them had originally planned to practice their skills today. But now it seemed that their trip had not been in vain. This lad's magical equipment was definitely at a nature-defying level. Greed rose in the hearts of the three. They looked at each other and nodded without batting an eyelid. Hai Qingshao scolded righteously, "Su, you have insulted the South Sea civilization. We will punish you on behalf of the South Sea civilization." He was clearly trying to snatch something, but his words were more pleasant than anything else. "As long as you have the ability." Su Yu's eyes were calm, even revealing a hint of coldness. "Attack." Since the three of them were here to snatch something, they naturally would not hold back. With the three strong men at the Forgetting Words realm attacking together, a powerful force erupted. And Su Yu finally made his move. He raised his right hand and flicked his fingers 3 times. With each flick, a terrifying force of the fish-dragon realm attacked. Puff, 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 with the crisp sound of 3 bugs being crushed, Hai Qingshao and the other 2 were sent flying, crashing onto the ground. Each of their bodies was badly mutilated, as if they had been pinched. The 3 of them were seriously injured, but their souls were still intact, so their consciousness was very clear. The 3 of them were horrified. Who are you?" Finally, they realized something was wrong. Su Yu's amazing defense could be attributed to the magical equipment, but what was up with the physique of the fish-dragon realm? No matter how stupid they were, they should understand that Su Yu did not rely on any magical equipment, but his own extraordinary strength. Su Yu walked over slowly with his hands behind his back. He said calmly, "Am I not the Su Yu that you want to force to kneel and apologize? Don't you recognize me?" Hai Qingshao swallowed hard, his heart trembling violently. Looking at Su Yu, who was not very tall, he felt a suffocating sense of fear. Du Mingtang's heart trembled, and he hurriedly said, This is Junior Hai's idea, I have no ill intentions." Yuan Chen also hurriedly tried to disassociate himself. Please have mercy, I only did this because I believe Junior Hai's slanderous words." "Is that so?" Su Yu shifted his gaze to Hai Qingshao. The latter's face was green with fear, his heart beating wildly. In silence, Su Yu looked down at his lower body. He saw that his crotch was wet, and there was a pungent smell. He was so scared that he wet his pants. "A person like you has the nerve to pursue Siener." Su Yu shook his head. Such a person was not even qualified to be a love rival. "Lord Su, I am a toad lusting after swan meat, please spare me, spare me." Hai Qingshao pleaded. Su Yu was surprised. "I thought you would use the identity of the Southern Ocean civilization to scare me." In the past, when he encountered enemies with identities, they had all acted the same way. Of course, Su Yu had never taken their identities seriously. He would kill and beat those who deserved it. "Lord Su, you must be joking. We are sincerely convinced, and we dare not disturb you anymore." Du Mingtang climbed up with difficulty, wanting to leave. "Did I say you could leave?" Su Yu said calmly. Thump. Du Mingtang and the other 2 people's hearts thumped at the same time. "Lord Su, what can I do for you?" Du Mingtang forced a smile. Su Yu said with his hands behind his back, "I believe you have seen the sign I erected at the entrance of the manor? Read it out loud." Du Mingtang was instantly embarrassed, stammering, "Trash, do not enter, or else." He had only read the first half of the sentence, not realizing that he was trash in Su Yu's eyes. Hence, he did not continue reading. "What about you? Do you remember?" Su Yu asked Yuan Chen. Yuan Chen also stammered, indicating that he had not finished reading. As for Hai Qingshao, he did not even look at him. "Since you have not seen it, I will repeat it," Su Yu said. "Trash, do not enter, or else you will be drowned in the latrine." Drowned in the latrine? The 3 of them turned pale in an instant. "Lord Su, don't be like this, we are all people of status. Everything can be discussed, there is no need for this." However, before they could finish their words, Su Yu had sealed their desolation power and souls. As such, they could not even control their bodies like puppets. I, Su, am a man of my word. Since I have decided to drown you in the latrine, I will definitely drown you in the latrine, Su Yu said calmly. Then, he brought the three of them to the latrine in the courtyard, kicking the stone cover of the latrine open. As the faces of the three of them turned red, Su Yu threw them into the latrine with three plopping sounds. All of a sudden, the stench filled the air. Su Yu was almost suffocated by the stench, so he immediately sealed the stone cover. Then, he came to the entrance of the manor and stared at the informant who had not gone far. With a glare, the informant felt a sharp pain in his heart, and the blood in his body boiled as if he was about to explode. You have been poisoned by me. Spread the news in the market immediately that these three people have been suppressed in the latrine by me, Su Yu. The informant was just a small character whose cultivation was only half a step to the path master. How would he dare to resist? He immediately came to the market and spread the news. In just 2 days, the news had spread throughout the whole city. If it had been someone else being suppressed in the latrine, it would probably not have caused a commotion. But Hai Qingshao and the other two were all disciples of the South Sea civilization. Their identity alone was enough to attract widespread attention. What, did I hear it wrong? The three outstanding disciples of the South Sea civilization have been suppressed in the latrine by Su Yu of unknown origin? It can't be. The disciples of the South Sea civilization who went to the East region this time are all elites among men. How could they end up being suppressed in the latrine? It's absolutely true. Someone has already gone to the manor to verify it. The owner of the manor, Su Yu, generously allowed people to go and check the latrine. It's really Hai Qingshao and the other two. What? It's true. Then I have to go and take a look. The South Sea civilization's geniuses have been suppressed in the latrine. This is an incredible story. For a moment, the doorstep of Su Yu's manor was trampled by visitors who came one after another. At the same time, the people of the shore civilization all knew about the existence of a person named Su Yu. The divine flame demonic woman and the others were the first to receive the news. Su Yu? Senior's disciple? The divine flame demonic woman was shocked. The purple flame demonic woman said excitedly, "Let's go and meet Mr. Su Yu right now." Wait. The divine flame demonic woman said carefully, "Senior made it very clear that if his disciple needs help, we will intervene. Now, there is no situation. If we intervene rashly, won't we disturb his training and incur his displeasure?" Hearing this, the purple flame demonic woman's heart sank. "Lord Divine Flame, you are very thoughtful," the divine flame demonic woman said. "How about this? You guys continue to stay here and wait for the senior. I will secretly stay near the manor and act according to the situation." After saying this, she left alone and stopped at the Qian manor near the manor. At the same time, in the market, many people who came from all over the place heard Su Yu's name. In a shabby inn, a group of people who came from extremely distant places were gathered together. Is that Su Yu, the Su Yu we know? Chapter 2372. I don't think so. I've heard that Hai Qingshao, Du Mingtang, and Yuan Chun are all family masters like us. Does the Su Yu we know have the right to defeat them and suppress them in a latrine pit? No matter what, let's go and take a look when we have the chance, a man with a deep voice said. The news of the uproar in the city naturally reached the ears of the South Ocean civilization. In the villa where they lived, in the backyard, 4 people gathered together. Qin Xianer was among them. Hai Qingshao and the others are too useless. They were suppressed in a latrine pit by a half-path master of unknown origin, a young female man said angrily. Her cultivation was quite extraordinary, having reached the middle stage of the fish-dragon realm. She was the one with the highest cultivation among the people present. Senior Sister Yuan, the blame doesn't lie with Hai Qingshao and the others, but with Su Yu, a young man at the early stage of the fish-dragon realm said unhappily. I agree with senior brother Fei. No matter how many mistakes Hai Qingshao and the others have made, they are still disciples of the South Ocean civilization. Are they trying to embarrass us by suppressing them in a latrine pit? The one who spoke was a man with a cultivation of the forgetting words realm, just like Yuan Chun. At first, he had planned to teach Su Yu a lesson with Hai Qingshao and the others. However, he had a mission to complete, so he did not go. Now that he knew what had happened to Hai Qingshao and the others, he was secretly relieved and angry. That Su Yu had gone too far. Hearing this, Qin Xian'er was shocked and thought to herself, is that guy really that powerful? It can't be. Qin Xian'er knew about the strength of Hai Qingshao and the others. They were strong men at the Forgetting Words realm, but they had all been defeated by Su Yu. It was impossible. However, she did not agree with senior brother Fei's words. Hai Qingshao and the others deserved to be suppressed in a latrine pit for picking a fight. Why did it seem like they deserved special forgiveness just because they were disciples of the South Ocean civilization? It was difficult for Qin Xian'er to accept such an arrogant and condescending attitude. Senior Sister Yuan said, the most important thing now is to rescue our 3 juniors. Senior brother Fei frowned. Should we inform our eldest senior brother and master first? The South Pole Fairy had 8 disciples, and senior sister Yuan was ranked second. Above her was the eldest senior brother that the South Pole Immortal One thought the most highly of, and his strength was unfathomable. It was said that senior martial sister Yuan had fought with him 20 years ago, and she couldn't even last one move before admitting defeat. Now that 20 years had passed and he had experienced the great desolate South Sea, it was hard to guess how powerful that first senior brother's strength was. There's no need. Master and eldest senior brother are already in closed-door training. There's no need to disturb them over such a small matter. Senior sister Yuan said, it's just a small matter. We can handle it ourselves. Alright, I'll follow the world. I'm going too. 2 of them decided to follow senior sister Yuan. Senior sister Yuan looked at the silent Qin Xian'er and asked, what about you? I'm not going, Qin Xian'er replied coldly. As Qin Xian'er recalled the scene of Su Yu being intimate with another woman, she didn't want to see the man who made her heart flutter. All right, you can stay here and look after the house. Senior sister Yuan didn't insist. The 3 of them left the villa. Senior brother Fei frowned and said, Senior sister, junior sister Qin doesn't seem to care about our matters. That's right. Junior sister Qin doesn't care about the honor of the South Sea civilization at all, Xinglong said. Senior sister Yuan didn't say anything. To be honest, she also hated Qin Xian'er. Ever since she had arrived, the few of them had been like flies that had seen meat, circling around Qin Xian'er all day. This made senior sister Yuan very jealous. However, as the second senior sister, she had never shown this. Don't talk about others behind their backs, senior sister Yuan said, then headed for the villa without another word. When they arrived at the villa, there was an endless stream of spectators both inside and outside. Damn it, they're all here to see the South Sea civilization make a fool of themselves. Xinglong had a bad temper and cursed on the spot. Senior brother Fei's expression darkened. He flew into the air and released his fish-dragon realm cultivation. With a murderous aura, he said, if you don't want to die, stay here and watch. Under the powerful pressure, everyone looked over in fear. When they realized that it was Fei Qing, who was ranked 3rd in the South Sea civilization, they scattered like birds and beasts. No one dared to stay. Soon, the inside and outside of the villa were empty. Senior sister Yuan looked down coldly and said, Who is Su Yu? Come out. Don't you have eyes? Can't you see? In the courtyard of the villa, Su Yu was quietly reading a book. Senior sister Yuan looked in the direction of the voice, and was slightly puzzled. He was much younger than she had imagined. Moreover, as the rumors had said, he was really a half-path master. It was really unimaginable. Hand him over. Jing Long was not polite at all. He said fiercely, "You're too bold. How dare you touch someone from the South Sea civilization?" As he spoke, he quickly flew to the courtyard and jumped down from the sky. Then, he stepped on Su Yu's head. "That's what you get for being insolent." Unexpectedly, Su Yu did not even raise his head. He calmly said, "You should have looked at the sign at the door before entering." As soon as he finished speaking, Su Yu raised his hand and grabbed Jing Long's ankle. Then, he casually smashed him onto the ground. Bang! Jing Long was smashed onto the ground. His flesh was mangled and he was unconscious. He lay on the ground like a dead dog, unable to move. He had been arrogant just a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, he had ended up like this. What was even more outrageous was that Su Yu had flung him into the cesspool, which was surrounded by the crowd. With a crash, Jing Long was thrown into the cesspool, and the stench of the day filled the air once again. Senior Sister Yuan and Fei Qing's expressions changed as they witnessed the scene. Before they came here, they had thought that the reason why Hai Qingshao and the others had been defeated was probably because Su Yu had used some kind of trick, which allowed him to succeed. But seeing it with their own eyes, that was not the case. Jing Long and Yuan Chen's cultivation levels were similar, but the result? Like a dead dog, he had been dealt with in an instant. Such abilities were unimaginably strong. Fei Qing's face trembled, and his arrogance immediately weakened. He was about to say something when Su Yu interrupted him. "I know who you are, but please look at the sign before you speak." Fei Qing and Senior Sister Yuan looked over and clearly saw the insolent words on the sign. "Trash!" Fei Qing's cheeks twitched as he raised his voice. "Sir, you should always leave a way out. What did Junior Brother Hai and the rest do to deserve such humiliation?" Su Yu put down the scroll. To be honest, he could not be bothered to reason with people, especially someone who had an arrogant attitude. "I was only humiliating them, but they wanted my life." As he spoke, Su Yu shook his sleeves, showing them the scene of Hai Qingshao and the rest barging into the manor. The 3 humiliating demands, the 3 ruthless attacks, and even the ugly act of wanting to kill Su Yu to steal his treasures were all displayed in front of them. Fei Qing was at a loss for words, but he still tried to argue. "But aren't you fine now? Did you suffer any physical harm? Why must you be so overbearing?" "I'm overbearing." Su Yu's gaze turned cold, shaking his head. He did not want to say another word to them. There was no need to reason with high and mighty people like them. It was clear that Su Yu was the victim. In their words, the culprit was the innocent one. Fei Qing said, "How about this? I'll give you 30 million Dao coins. Let them go immediately." His attitude did not seem like he was negotiating. It was clearly charity. It was as if Su Yu had profited greatly. Su Yu silently picked up the book and continued reading, throwing Fei Qing to the back of his mind, completely ignoring him. Fei Qing spoke a few times, but Su Yu did not respond to him, causing him to feel annoyed. "Do you really not understand the situation you are in? You have offended the South Ocean civilization. I am giving you a chance by talking to you nicely now. It will be too late if you regret it in the future." Su Yu's silence still answered him. "Hey!" Fei Qing was finally annoyed. "Senior Sister Yuan, this person refuses a toast only to drink a forfeit. I'll go down and meet him." As a Fish Dragon Realm Master, Fei Qing was confident. He was certain that no matter how powerful Su Yu was, as long as he was careful, he would be fine. Senior Sister Yuan nodded. Since words did not work, they could only resort to force. Fei Qing flew over quickly. He first released the aura of the Fish Dragon Realm, and at the same time released his realm and doctrine artifact. He shouted, "Don't think you can look down on me just because you have some skills. The South Ocean civilization's heritage is beyond your imagination." However, he was still in midair. Suddenly, Su Yu looked at him and snorted. Fei Qing's body suddenly burst into flames. It was a fire that could not be extinguished. Suddenly, Fei Qing let out a heart-wrenching scream as he fell from the sky. Finally, with a thud, he crashed onto the ground, knocking himself unconscious on the spot. With a wave of his hand, Su Yu threw him into the cesspit. In this way, a total of 5 people were all suppressed in the cesspit. It was a spectacular scene. "You've gone too far." Senior Sister Yuan's face was livid. "Since you have repeatedly challenged the bottom line of the South Ocean civilization, I will grant you your wish. I will go back and ask my master to teach you how to respect others on behalf of your parents." Senior Sister Yuan snorted and turned to leave. Su Yu's eyes turned cold. He had no parents in this world, but that did not mean anyone could insult them. "You'll have to ask me first if you want to leave." Su Yu took out the heaven-destroying rod and said calmly, "Grow." Swoosh! The heaven-destroying rod, which was the size of a rolling pin, suddenly became 10,000 feet long. Moreover, it was aimed at Senior Sister Yuan with great accuracy. She was startled by the sudden lengthening of the rod. Seeing it coming at her, she subconsciously tried to grab it. However, as soon as her hand touched it, she realized how heavy it was. Even though she exerted all her strength and cultivation of the middle stage of the fish-dragon realm, it was of no use. She was suppressed by the heaven-destroying rod, knocked down from the sky, and smashed into the manor. The heaven-destroying rod pinned her to the ground, and could not be pushed away. It became heavier and heavier, causing her to vomit blood. "You go with her." With a flick of his finger, Su Yu sealed her cultivation and soul, then threw her into the cesspit. The South Pole Fairy Wang had a total of 8 disciples, but 6 of them were suppressed in the cesspit. Such explosive news spread like wildfire through the mouths of the onlookers, quickly spreading throughout the civilization. For a moment, the entire civilization was in an uproar. It was understandable that Yuan Chun and the others were suppressed. After all, the cultivation of the 3 of them was not top-notch. But what kind of person was Senior Sister Yuan? Chapter 2373. More importantly, according to the people who had gone to take a look, this person called Su Yu wasn't an old monster who had been cultivating for many years. Instead, he was a young man who had been cultivating for only 100 years. At this moment, everyone's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets as they tried to guess Su Yu's origins. Some people guessed that he must be a disciple of a 7-star civilization lord. Moreover, he was the disciple of one of the masters of the 9 great 7-star civilizations, who was ranked near the top. As for why they had never heard of his name, many people attributed it to the fact that he had deliberately hidden Su Yu from the public. Such an important piece of news would naturally reach the ears of the South Sea civilization. When Qin Xianer heard the reports from the ordinary disciples, her eyes widened. Even Senior Sister Yuan, she couldn't believe that Su Yu's power had reached such a terrifying level in just 20 or 30 years. Is that guy a freak? Qin Xianer's mouth was agape as she guessed. "Fairy, please think of a way to save them. If this continues, the honor of the South Sea civilization will be completely ruined," the disciple said bitterly. The South Sea civilization had never suffered such humiliation. Among all the disciples, only Qin Xianer was still around. "What can I do?" Qin Xianer pointed at her own nose. She was not even a match for Hai Qingshao, so how could she deal with Su Yu? The disciple said, "Fairy, please wake Master and eldest senior brother." Qin Xianer hesitated. It would be easy to wake them up, but if they were to really attack Su Yu, they would surely not let him off, given what he had done. The lightest punishment would be the destruction of one's cultivation, and the heaviest punishment would be death. Although she held a grudge against Su Yu, she didn't want to see him die. "There is no need to disturb them. I will go." Qin Xianer didn't want to see Su Yu, but she had no choice but to go. After leaving the villa, Qin Xianer went straight to the manor. Standing outside the manor, she looked at the arrogant sign and pouted. "This guy is really arrogant. I don't remember him being like this in the past." As she entered, she thought about how she could convince Su Yu to let her go. He seems to be quite friendly to me. If I try to persuade him with words, he should give me some face, Qin Xian'er thought to herself. When he arrived at the courtyard, he saw Su Yu sitting there, reading a book. His posture was relaxed and his artistic conception was ethereal. He was like an immortal in a painting. Qin Xian'er felt a sense of familiarity. This scene was very familiar. You finally came. Su Yu put down the book, raised his head, and revealed a faint smile as he looked at Qin Xian'er. He had suppressed Hai Qin Shao and the others in a cesspool, but of course it wasn't out of revenge. He was waiting for Qin Xian'er. He guessed that Qin Xian'er wouldn't be able to sit back and watch her senior brother and senior sister be humiliated. Regardless of whether she was willing or not, she would come forward to plead for mercy. Qin Xian'er wrinkled her nose. You make it sound like you were waiting for me. I was indeed waiting for you. Su Yu said bluntly, they are just a few useless trash. Why would I waste my time to deal with them one by one? Qin Xian'er instantly became unnatural and said awkwardly, here we go again. Can you not say such hypocritical words? Su Yu chuckled, then took out the spiritual liquid made from the snake gallbladder. He divided it into 5 portions and placed them on the table. At the same time, he pointed at the cesspool and said, don't expect me to let them go just because of a few nice words from you. Qin Xian'er's heart was exposed, and she said in embarrassment, bah. Who asked you? Come, let's fight. Su Yu chuckled. Okay. He clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Qin Xian'er with a smile. Go ahead and attack me. If you can harm even a single hair on my body, I'll admit defeat. A crafty light flickered in Qin Xian'er's eyes. Remember what you said. Ha! Qin Xian'er held a doctrine artifact, which was emitting a murderous aura. Her whole person had a sharp aura, and she instantly charged forward, thrusting a javelin at Su Yu's shoulder. She purposely aimed for a harmless part, as she was afraid that she would really hurt Su Yu. However, Su Yu didn't really want to exchange pointers with her, as she had imagined. Instead, he tilted his shoulder lightly and avoided the attack. He then grabbed Qin Xian'er's waist with his right hand and pulled her into his embrace. At the same time, he pressed his other hand on her shoulder and forcefully interrupted the Path Master's power flowing in her body, causing her to lose her cultivation. When Qin Xian'er came back to her senses, she had already been subdued by Su Yu. You? Let go of me, you shameless be***starred. Qin Xian'er's body stiffened in Su Yu's embrace, and her face became flushed. She didn't expect that Su Yu would treat her so lightly. Su Yu extended his finger and covered her lip. His eyes were filled with loneliness and expectation as he said, I don't care if I'm shameless or a***starred, because I'm such a person. His words seemed to have a hidden meaning. Qin Xian'er's mind went blank, and she could only pound his chest continuously. However, she couldn't curse him anymore. Moreover, the strength of her pounding became weaker and weaker. In the end, she stopped moving and let Su Yu hug her. Do you like me? Qin Xian'er raised her head and looked at Su Yu quietly. Su Yu nodded. Yes. How much do you like me? Qin Xian'er's eyes shone brightly. She didn't understand why she had asked such a question. It seemed like this question had been stuck in her heart for a long time. Su Yu closed his eyes slowly, then opened them again. He then said earnestly and clearly, if you want my life, I can immediately give you my love. Qin Xian'er's heart thumped loudly, and an indescribable emotion welled up in her heart. There was happiness, and there was also an indescribable sadness. It seemed like she had been waiting for such an answer for an entire era. Why? Qin Xian'er looked straight into Su Yu's eyes. Su Yu didn't speak, but pointed at the 5 bottles of spiritual liquid. The answer is in there. Qin Xian'er pursed her lips. She and Su Yu had only met twice, so it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were strangers. Drinking such a thing casually would naturally be risky. However, as she looked into Su Yu's eyes, she didn't know whether it was an illusion, but she felt like there was a voice in her heart urging her to drink it. Okay. Qin Xianer hesitated for a moment, then walked over. She picked up the first bottle and drank it slowly. A wave of spiciness entered her throat, and it was extremely stimulating. Due to the stimulation, some fragmented memories appeared in her mind. In a forest, a young boy was squatting in front of her, helping her absorb the snake's poison. She could faintly see Su Yu's face from that boy. Qin Xianer looked at Su Yu in a daze. Have we known each other since a long time ago? Su Yu couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart, but he forced himself to calm down. He smiled and said, to be precise, we've known each other for 135 years and 10 months. Tears welled up in Qin Xianer's eyes. Su Yu hadn't lied to her. They really knew each other, and they had known each other for many years. The blank and incomplete memories in her mind were really related to Su Yu. Then, she drank the second bottle. This time, the scene that appeared was that of a joyous wedding. Su Yu was wearing a red robe, and she was wearing a phoenix coronet. They were both bowing to a smiling middle-aged man. Qin Xianer covered her small mouth in disbelief. She pointed at Su Yu, then at herself. Su Yu couldn't hide the loneliness in his eyes. Yes, we are husband and wife. Ah! Qin Xianer let out a low cry. She couldn't accept this sudden reality, so she drank the third bottle immediately. Another scene appeared in her mind. Su Yu was stepping on the ice, and he was taking her away in front of the eyes of all the people in the faction. This was because she was being forced to marry someone else. In the scene, Su Yu was standing alone, facing the people of the faction whose cultivation was far higher than his. His eyes were filled with the resoluteness and solemnity of going forward even if there were a myriad of enemies in front of him, and they were filled with the resoluteness and unyieldingness of welcoming death. As for Qin Xianer, she was being protected by Su Yu's not-so-majestic body. It was as if even if the world collapsed and the world was about to be destroyed, Su Yu would still stand in front of her and never retreat. Seeing this, something in the depths of Qin Xianer's soul seemed to be touched, and she couldn't help but feel sad. She couldn't help but shed tears. At this moment, the way she looked at Su Yu changed completely. Are you really my husband? Su Yu didn't speak, but handed her the fourth bottle. Qin Xianer drank it in one gulp. She was eager to know what happened between them after that. After the fourth bottle, another scene appeared. However, the scene stunned her, and her face was full of confusion. She and Su Yu had completed their unfinished engagement in the Zhenlong continent, in front of the world and all living beings. However, a beautiful woman, who was so beautiful that even the sun seemed to lose its luster, had appeared. When she appeared, Su Yu finally told Qin Xianer that the person he liked was that extremely beautiful woman. In the end, that woman killed her with a sword. No! Qin Xianer covered her mouth and kept retreating. Her eyes were filled with tears, and it was as if she could feel the pain she felt at that moment. She was first deceived by her husband, and then by her best friend, who seemed to be her best friend. You are a liar! Qin Xianer stared at Su Yu coldly. I forgot you because you betrayed me, didn't you? Her heart was suddenly filled with hatred. Su Yu didn't deny it. He said, I am indeed a liar, an incurable liar. The first person he deceived wasn't his enemy, but the woman he loved the most. There is one last bottle, Su Yu said. You can drink it or not. Every moment that Qin Xianer recalled was the most important moment in her life, so her memory fragments would come back first. Feeling Qin Xianer's pain, Su Yu felt that if Qin Xianer's memory recovered to the moment when he betrayed her, it would be an ending. At least Qin Xianer wouldn't have to worry about her missing memories. She only needed to know that he wasn't worth remembering. Although he was unwilling, Qin Xianer didn't mind. I don't want to believe you anymore. Qin Xianer's eyes were blurred by tears, and she couldn't stop thinking about Su Yu's betrayal, Xia Jingyu's face, and the darkest moment in her life. She even forgot about Hai Qingxiao and the others, as she turned around and ran away. Su Yu looked at her disappearing figure. It was like the time when Qin Xianer fell into Su Yu's arms and disappeared. He raised his head to look at the empty sky, and he felt a great sense of desolation, which almost suffocated him. The pain in his chest was like it was being torn apart, and it spread throughout his heart. After a long time, he looked at the last bottle. If Qin Xianer consumed it, she would surely remember that Su Yu had given his life to Qin Xianer. Just as he had said, his love for her was, "If you want my life, I will immediately give it to you." Chapter 2374. Caressing the last bottle, Su Yu felt lonely, but he did not regret it. Xianer had regained her memory. What happened in the past could not be skipped. Su Yu did not want to escape that scene. That was indeed the time when he hurt Qin Xianer the most. He had always wanted to make up for it, but he had never succeeded. Even though Qin Xianer had forgiven him and Xia Jingyu. However, he understood that the pain was like a nail hammered into a piece of wood. Even if the nail was removed one day, the scar would still be there, and it would not disappear. The reason why it could not be seen was because it was hidden by the wood and did not want others to see it. Qin Xianer was a kind girl who constantly contributed. She did not want Su Yu to think that she cared about what happened in the past. She did not want Su Yu to feel guilty or sad, so she chose to hide it. However, the fourth bottle of spiritual liquid reminded her of that scene. It was obvious that she had never forgotten. She just wanted Su Yu to think that she had. Standing where he was, Su Yu felt empty, like a puppet who had lost his soul and future. He looked at the sky motionlessly. Then, the sky turned completely dark. There was no light. Under the dim starlight, Su Yu slowly took a step forward and walked away alone. Mr. Su. The divine flame female demoness appeared from the darkness with a gentle expression. She sighed softly and said, "I don't know much about human emotions, but as the saying goes, sincerity can move metal and stone. Over time, that girl will understand your feelings." Su Yu's eyes dimmed, but he forced a smile. "Thank you." The divine flame demonic woman was slightly surprised. Why was Su Yu not surprised to know who she was? "Are you the divine flame demonic woman that my master mentioned?" Su Yu pulled himself together. Without Qin Xianer, he had other things to do. For example, destroying the holy mountain. He and Qin Xianer had fallen into this situation because of the holy mountain. As long as I, Su Yu, exist in the Tai realm, there will be no holy mountain. He swore in his heart. Hearing Su Yu's words, the divine flame demonic woman was nervous and expectant. "Your master mentioned me?" She really wanted to know what that senior had said about her. "Yes, my master said that although you are not very talented and will not amount to much, if you are willing to work hard and receive guidance, you will one day reach the peak of the martial path, comparable to the divine ancestors and the ancient gods." The divine flame demonic woman was pleasantly surprised. "Senior, did you really say that?" Su Yu looked at her. "I never lie." In his heart, he added, "Except now." The divine flame demonic woman's heart was filled with excitement, and her heart was unprecedentedly open. She was even more determined to survive this calamity and continue fighting in the next epoch. She looked at Su Yu. To be honest, she was quite surprised. Firstly, he was surprised that Su Yu's cultivation was only at the half-step Daolord realm. A disciple taught by such a senior should be at the same level as Xian Daoist master. Secondly, he was shocked. Although Su Yu's cultivation was low, his abilities were so terrifying that it made people tremble. A mere half-step Dao Lord could suppress a mid-stage Dao Lord in the Fish Dragon realm. She had never heard of a Dao Lord who was able to fight a Dao Lord who was several levels above him. Therefore, she was sure that the person in front of her was that senior's disciple. Only such a senior could teach such a heaven-defying disciple. "Where is my master?" "Your master is out, but he told us to take care of you as much as possible if we meet." If young Master Su doesn't want to stay in the manor, you can come with us to the inn and wait for your master's return. Su Yu nodded. Let's go. The divine flame demonic woman nodded. Suddenly, she looked at Hai Qin Shao and the others and asked, What should we do with them? Su Yu looked at them and could not help but think of Qin Xianer. After all, they were Qin Xianer's senior brothers. Suppressing them in the latrine was enough. He said, If they want to stay in there, then let them stay. After saying this, he turned and left. Hai Qin Shao and the others felt as if they had been pardoned. They all crawled out of the latrine and fled back to the manor. When Su Yu returned to the inn, he ran into Xie Xiaoye, who was wandering around in boredom. Xie Xiaoye had wanted to go to the manor to observe. Suddenly, she noticed Su Yu's gloomy mood and asked, What's wrong? I'm fine. Su Yu forced himself to calm down and smiled. Before we set off, I will go into seclusion. If there is nothing urgent, do not disturb me for the time being. Xie Xiaoye was suspicious. After Su Yu left, she asked the divine flame demonic woman. The divine flame demonic woman could tell that Xie Xiaoye and the senior's relationship was not ordinary. Moreover, many people knew about the manor, so she did not hide it. Knowing that Su Yu and Qin Xianer had fallen out, Xie Xiaoye's heart skipped a beat. She thought that her actions that day had caused the two of them to be unhappy. Others might not know, but she knew that Qin Xianer was Su Yu's wife. Thinking of this, she felt extremely guilty. After thinking for a long time, she bit her lip and went out alone, arriving at the manor where the Southern Sea civilization was. Looking at the tight defensive seals, Xie Xiaoye's eyes flashed. She took out an ancient talisman that was filled with demonic energy and pasted it on her forehead. A strange scene appeared. Her body disappeared into thin air, not even her breath could be felt. Even more impressive was that she could ignore the seals that the South Pole Fairy Wang had personally set up and enter the manor. After searching for a while, she came to the house where Qin Xianer was. She could hear the incessant sobbing inside. Qin Xianer was lying on the table, looking at the lonely candle flame. Her heart reverberated with the pain of that memory, and she could not let it go for a long time. Su Yu, since I am your wife, why did you betray me and fall in love with another woman? You heartless man! She clenched her fists. All of a sudden, she pulled down the bag hanging from her waist. The bag was filled with a dazzling array of items, but every one of them was exquisite. Even though she had lost her memory, Qin Xianer still had a habit that never changed. Every time she had something good, she liked to keep half of it in the small bag. Day after day, year after year. She did not understand where this habit came from, and for whom these things were kept. It was only when she drank the 4 bottles of spiritual liquid that she suddenly understood. Perhaps the bag was left for Su Yu. She always wanted to leave the things that she liked to Su Yu. But what did Su Yu do to her? She threw the bag on the table and slapped it. If she hit it, it would definitely be smashed, and all the years of accumulation would go up in smoke. However, when her palm hit the air, she could not hit it. It was as if some kind of power was obstructing her. Her heart was filled with pain. Why is it like this? Ahem. Well, Miss Qin, I think you have misunderstood. There is nothing between me and your husband, Xie Xiaoye said awkwardly as she tore off the talisman on her forehead. Qin Xianer suddenly sensed the movement behind her, and she stabbed her spear behind her out of reflex. Xie Xiaoye reacted quickly. As the path master of the fish dragon realm, she easily caught the spear. She could not help but spit. Do you have to be so cruel? Qin Xianer turned around. Seeing that it was her, she was immediately displeased. How did you get in? There was a great formation set up by the South Pole Fairy Wang outside, and ordinary people could not enter. Moreover, she cultivated the path of Azura, so she was very sensitive to auras. Even the eldest senior brother could not get close to her without her noticing. Don't worry about how I got in. I am here to tell you that you have misunderstood Su Yu. Xie Xiaoye stared at her and said, Su Yu has never done anything to me, nor has he done anything to other women. Qin Xianer had already obtained part of Su Yu's memory, but it was very incomplete, and she did not know all of Su Yu's past. Listening to the woman in front of her, it seemed like she had a lot of history with Su Yu. She felt very uncomfortable, and she snorted. "You speak as if you know him very well." Xie Xiaoya thought for a moment, then said, "I know him quite well, at least in terms of his character. For example, last time, there was a peerless beauty called Wuxin Iron Constable who was captured by him, but he did not touch her at all, and even let her go." Peerless beauty? Qin Xianer's heart clenched. Was she talking about the woman who killed her? Is that so? Qin Xianer looked incredulous. Xie Xiaoya said, "Yes, he has many beautiful women around him, such as Bai Yunhong Xian, Princess Qianyu, and so on, but Su Yu has never done anything improper." There were other women? Qin Xianer clenched her fist. That playboy. He loves every woman he sees. The more she listened, the more uncomfortable she felt. She even had a vague sense of urgency, as if Su Yu would leave with other women. "Hey, I've said so much just to tell you that you're the only one in his heart. He's never been a playboy. Why can't you understand human language?" Xie Xiaoya rolled her eyes. Qin Xianer was furious. She glared at Xie Xiaoya. "What about you? What was the meaning of hugging his arm in broad daylight? Aren't you ashamed?" Feeling wronged, Xie Xiaoya argued, That's because we have a good relationship and are honest with each other. Why don't you just say that we are innocent?" The more Qin Xianer spoke, the more jealous she felt. Who was Xie Xiaoya? She was a pirate. When had she ever lowered herself to explain to someone and even tried to persuade them to make peace? However, Qin Xianer's whole body was full of thorns, and she wasn't easy to talk to. She was annoyed and thought, "You can think whatever you want. Without you, Su Yu wouldn't need another woman. Humph, I'll go back and advise him right now. There are plenty of fish in the sea. Why should he have a one-sided crush on a flower? There's no need for him to be upset over a heartless woman like you." He was injured because of me? Qin Xianer's heart softened, and her anger dissipated by half. She should hate him, but she couldn't bring herself to hate him. However, hearing Xie Xiaoya say that she wanted to persuade Su Yu to find another woman, Qin Xianer was really annoyed. She scolded, "Vixen, you've finally revealed your tale and said what you're thinking?" Xie Xiaoya pointed at her own nose angrily. "Vixen me? Humph. You've long wanted to break us up so that you could take over, haven't you?" Qin Xianer was like a vinegar jar. Xie Xiaoya rolled up her sleeves, furious. "I say, you really don't know what's good for you. In the past, anyone who dared to talk to me like this would have been beaten to death by me." Qin Xianer curled her lips. "You want to fight? Sure, that's exactly what I want." Chapter 2375. Are you serious? Fine. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Ever since she became the Fish Dragon Realm Dao Lord, Xie Xiaoya had never fought before. As the two girls talked, they finally started fighting. With a loud crash, Qin Xianer's room was cut in half by the shockwaves of their battle. The roof beams were sent flying hundreds of feet into the air, and the nearby houses suffered from the unexpected disaster, causing a lot of damage. Next to Qin Xianer was senior sister Yuan's room. She was bathing inside, washing off the feces on her body. Caught off guard, her room was flipped over, revealing her naked body. For a moment, the scenery was endless. "Ah!" Senior sister Yuan screamed and hurriedly condensed clothes on her body. She glared at Qin Xianer's room. "Qin Xianer!" Clang clang clang. Only when intense fighting sounds came from inside did senior sister Yuan realize something was wrong. She shouted anxiously, "Enemy attack!" She took out her Dao artifact and rushed in. Xie Xiaoya, who was fighting with Qin Xianer, became more and more surprised. In terms of cultivation, Qin Xianer was only at the Forgetting Words realm. However, the other party's battle experience shocked her. Every move of the other party seemed to be trained for the sake of killing. They might not be that powerful, but every single one of them was lethal. She could not do anything to the other party for a while. Sensing Senior Sister Yuan's arrival, Xie Xiaoye could only retreat. She shouted, "I'll deal with you next time." After saying that, she took out the invisibility talisman and stuck it on her forehead. She disappeared without a trace. Qin Xianer pierced the air with her spear and shouted, Come out and fight." Senior Sister Yuan rushed over and looked around. After confirming that the enemy's aura had disappeared, she felt extremely strange. She was surprised that this person could sneak into the villa. She looked at the furious Qin Xianer, who was like a little bomb, with surprise. She felt extremely strange. In her memory, Qin Xianer had always been cold and frighteningly calm. She was rarely angry. But now she was so angry. Did the enemy do something to her? Was there a need to be so angry? "Junior Sister Qin, are you okay?" Senior Sister Yuan asked. Qin Xianer looked around and gritted her teeth. "I'm fine." That tone, no matter how I looked at it, did it seem like there was something wrong? Senior Martial Sister Yuan said, "The enemy has already left. Let's check the villa's formation first to see if there are any flaws." Qin Xianer was extremely unwilling to give up, and shouted at the air, "Don't let me see you again!" "Tsk." Vaguely, Xie Xiaoye's disdainful voice could be heard. Qin Xianer, who had just calmed down, immediately glared at the surroundings. "Smelly vixen, come out! Don't hide if you dare! Hee, why don't you find me if you can?" Xie Xiaoye didn't care at all. Qin Xianer went crazy. "Fine. I will look for Su Yu now and ask him to chase you away." She was so angry that she had almost forgotten that she was angry at Su Yu. "You? Of course, I'm his wife," Qin Xianer said proudly. Xie Xiaoye couldn't laugh any more and said coldly, "How dare you? Then let's give it a try." Qin Xianer smiled, revealing a row of white and fine teeth. As the two girls bickered, Senior Martial Sister Yuan was dumbfounded. What was up with a fox spirit? Whose wife was Qin Xianer? Just as the three girls were engrossed in the discussion, suddenly, an unexpected violent cracking sound reverberated outside the formation. In the sky above the entire civilization, the deafening roars of dozens of giant dragons rang out at the same time. The clouds in the sky shook, and endless dragon breaths turned into giant fireballs, descending from the sky into the forest. Wherever the fireballs landed, there was a sea of fire. Cities and vast forests were destroyed by the fireballs. As the main city of the shore civilization, it suffered more than half of the giant dragon breath. Senior Martial Sister Yuan's expression changed abruptly. "Oh no, the Dragon Clan is here for revenge." Qin Xianer's expression was also grave, and she couldn't care less about bickering. A few days ago, the lonely emperor of the Southern Domain Dragon Clan appeared in the shore civilization and started a massacre. The strong men of the shore civilization attacked and drove him away. It was said that the lonely emperor was not satisfied. Before he left, he said that the Dragon Clan couldn't be humiliated, and that he would take revenge on the person who took away the Dragon Emperor's blood. Now it seemed that the lonely emperor had kept his word. In just a few days, he gathered dozens of giant dragons of the celestial realm and above to take revenge on the shore civilization. As they were talking, suddenly, 3 giant dragon breaths smashed onto the South Sea civilization's restriction. 2 of the giant dragon breaths were easily blocked by the restriction. However, the 3rd giant dragon breath was extremely powerful for some reason, and it directly smashed through the restriction. The fireball passed through the restriction and smashed into the mountain villa, instantly causing a sea of fire. Under the terrifying dragon breath, all the houses were burned. The living beings below the Tao Master level immediately screamed in pain as they were burned and melted. Even Qin Xianer and the others felt extremely uncomfortable, and they had to use the power of the Tao Master to resist the high temperature. At this moment, an angry snort came from under the mountain villa. "The Dragon Clan is too much." Boom! The ground shook violently, and a 100 feet crack appeared. A short old man with a white beard flew out from it and rushed into the giant dragons in the sky. The South Pole Immortal Hermit is also here. That's good, I have long wanted to meet you. One of the giant dragons with an especially thick body let out an extremely deep dragon roar. The South Pole Immortal Hermit's expression suddenly turned serious. Long Taiji, I didn't expect you to be nearby. He glanced at the black dragon among the giant dragons and understood that these dragons were protecting the lonely emperor. As the #1 heaven ruler of the current generation of the Dragon Clan and the future heir of the Dragon Emperor, the lonely emperor would certainly not lack the protection of powerful beings. The South Pole Immortal Hermit had no choice but to fight the Dragon Clan when the Dragon Clan invaded. He immediately fought with Long Taiji, one of the 3 supreme Tao masters of the Dragon Clan. The other places that had been destroyed by the Dragon Breath were too busy trying to save themselves to fight the Dragon Clan. As a result, the Dragon Clan swooped down to capture the martial artists of the Shore civilization. The targets they chose were very specific, either young women or young men. This was because the charming woman and Su Yu who had escaped from the lonely emperor were both young people. Therefore, the 200 drops of dragon blood must be among these young people. Roar! Suddenly, a giant dragon of the celestial realm swooped down towards the South Sea civilization. Obviously, the young men and women in the mountain villa had attracted their attention. Insolence! The South Pole Immortal Hermit was unable to free himself and had no time to rescue them. However, from within the crack, a young man with a blade shrouded in 5 colored rays of light dashed out. He had a head of long blood-red hair, jet-black lips, and a resolute face, giving off a wild feeling. Tyrant blade style. The wild young man slashed through the air. A 10,000-foot-long blade energy sliced through space and time, striking the giant dragon of the celestial realm. With a dull thud, the giant dragon's back was slashed open, revealing a wound so deep that the bone could be seen. The giant dragon let out a painful roar, then became angry. "Ant. Fortunately, I have a middle-stage Tao master of the celestial realm. Otherwise, I would have fallen into your trap." Pow! The giant dragon's long tail swept fiercely, like a mountain range, sweeping the entire mountain villa away. Everyone in the mountain villa, including the wild young man, was swept into mid-air in an instant. Roar! The giant dragon opened its mouth and sucked everyone in mid-air into its mouth. Everyone was horrified and tried to escape with all their might. However, the suction of the dragon's mouth was truly terrifying. No matter how hard they tried, they were unable to escape. Only the wild young man bit the tip of his tongue, spitting out a large amount of blood onto the curved blade in his hand. The curved blade turned blood-red as it escaped with the young man. The rest of the people were swallowed by it. Even Qin Xianer was not spared. After capturing them, the giant dragon flew into the sky, returning to the group of dragons. The rest of the giant dragons also caught enough people and gathered together. At this moment, the old man of the South Pole was panting, his whole body covered in injuries. As for Long Taiji, apart from losing some of his scales, he was not seriously injured. Haha, the #1 person in the West regions is only SOSO. Long Taiji laughed in disdain. Let's go. It led the dragons and swaggered away, leaving behind a devastated civilization. At the same time, the inn that Su Yu was in was not spared either. It was razed to the ground by the Dragon Clan. However, the divine flame demonic woman was holding the fort in the inn, so it was not damaged in the slightest. The giant dragon that had come to capture Su Yu was also chased away by the divine flame demonic woman. "Mr. Su, are you all right?" The divine flame demonic woman found Su Yu's seclusion room and asked with concern. Su Yu was quietly sitting at his original position. Even though his cultivation room had been destroyed, it did not seem to affect him in the slightest. He shook off the dust on his body, lightly shaking his head. "I'm fine. Even without the divine flame demonic woman, the giant dragon could not do anything to Suyu. At his current level, his heavenly dragon body was no weaker than an early-stage celestial realm pathmaster. The divine flame demonic woman heaved a sigh of relief. She looked at the remnant shadows of the departing dragons and said worriedly, "Just as I expected, the dragon clan will not let this matter rest. I wonder who took away the 200 drops of the Dragon Emperor's dragon blood and provoked the dragons to invade." Suyu was filled with disdain. The lonely emperor had made it clear that he had used 200 drops of the Dragon Emperor's blood to exchange for the body of the young dragon. How honorable had he been! But when he had really lost the Dragon Emperor's blood, he had flown into a rage and destroyed the North Shore civilization to search for the 200 drops of the Dragon Emperor's blood. Suyu's impression of the lonely emperor could not be any worse. He looked righteous on the surface, but he was not. However, this had nothing to do with him. In the underground market, he had not exposed any information about himself. No matter who the Dragon Clan captured, they would not be able to betray Suyu. At that moment, Xie Xiaoye ran back in a panic. It turned out that she had the talisman with her, and had managed to escape through the seal in time. She had seen Qin Xianer being captured with her own eyes and knew that something was wrong. She had rushed back immediately. "Oh no, Suyu," Xie Xiaoye said hurriedly. "Qin Xianer has been captured by the Dragon Clan." "What?" Suyu stood up abruptly, his face filled with anger. "What do those useless people from the South Ocean civilization think? Even a few dragons can't stop them." He had thought that no matter which faction's young talents were captured, they would not be able to capture the South Ocean civilization. After all, there was the #1 expert of the West regions, the South Pole Immortal One, holding the fort. Who knew that they would be so vulnerable? Suyu felt extremely anxious. The longer Qin Xianer was in the hands of the Dragon Clan, the more danger she would be in. He had witnessed the brutality of the Dragon Clan. They had destroyed the underground market and the North Shore civilization at every turn, not caring about the lives of the other races. Now that Xianer was in their hands, how could she have a good ending? Chapter 2376. Although Xianer's memories stopped at the moment when she hated him. But he couldn't just stand by and watch. Even if she hated him to the core, she had to save him from the abyss of suffering. "Suyu, are you going to save her? Don't be foolish. It's impossible for you to save Qin Xianer by yourself." Xie Xiaoye sensed Suyu's intentions and stopped him. The entire coast civilization had fallen into a state of devastation. The #1 expert of the Western region had returned with injuries, and many experts had died. How could Suyu save Qin Xianer from them all by himself? That was a path of certain death. Suyu's gaze was calm and serene. "If it's for her, I can defy the heavens and the earth, and I won't regret it even if I die." After he finished speaking, he turned into a bolt of lightning and shot out of the clouds, chasing after the Dragon Clan. Xie Xiaoye stood rooted to the ground, her mind echoing with his parting words. Great envy surged in her heart. "With a husband like this, what more can I ask for?" Xie Xiaoye murmured. "Qin Xianer, oh Qin Xianer, how did you find such a husband?" The divine flame demoness wore a worried expression as she said, "Hide yourselves for now. I'll go with young Master Su." However, at that moment, Su Yu's voice came from the sky. "I alone am enough." Even though the divine flame demonic woman was powerful, she was ultimately too weak to play a decisive role. If that was the case, Su Yu might as well go alone. There was no need to implicate innocent people because of him. The divine flame demonic woman's footsteps faltered as she thought anxiously, if only Senior were here. Why would he allow the dragon tribe to wreak havoc here? Xie Xiaoye's eyes turned slightly. "Don't worry, evil woman. The most important thing now is to contact the leaders of the other forces and form an army to chase after the dragon race." This time, the younger generation of many forces were captured by the Dragon Clan. These young elites were the main force participating in the recruitment of the 8-star civilizations. How could they sit back and do nothing? Just now, the dragon race came too suddenly, and many of the leaders of the factions did not have time to react. If they were united and worked together, how could they be afraid of those dozens of dragons? If I'm fast enough, I might be able to catch up in time and help Su Yu. The divine flame demonic woman was well aware of how powerful the dragon tribe was. If she went alone, she might not be able to make much of a difference. She could only rely on the strength of the leaders of the other forces. Fortunately, almost all the people from the western region's 9 Grade 7 civilizations had arrived at the shore civilization. With their combined strength, it was almost certain that they would be able to recapture the person who had been kidnapped. The premise was that they were still alive. "I'll contact them right away," the divine flame demoness said. However, someone moved faster than her. That was the South Pole Immortal One. As the #1 expert in the West regions, the South Pole Immortal Hermit had great rallying power. With the vigorous power of a Taoist master in the Great Venerable Realm, he announced to the entire shore civilization, "All elites of the celestial tier and above in the civilization, come quickly." They, who had been corrupted by the dragon race, immediately found their backbone and headed to the villa where the South Ocean civilization was. The divine flame demonic woman furrowed her brows. She and the South Pole Immortal One did not have a friendly relationship. However, for Su Yu's sake, he had no choice but to go. When he arrived at the villa, sure enough, the forces of the 9 major 7-star civilizations were all present. For example, the famous 10,000 insect civilization was on the list. The arrival of the divine flame demonic woman made many powerful cultivators excited. The arrival of the second strongest expert in the western region boosted their confidence. "Everyone, I don't need to explain the situation." The South Pole Immortal Hermit looked at the divine flame demonic woman meaningfully and said in a low voice, "The dragon race of the southern region has the audacity to trespass into the western region and capture our outstanding disciple in front of us. This is a public declaration of war." The atmosphere suddenly became much more solemn. The dragon race's provocation could indeed be called a war. "Can you tolerate it?" The South Pole Immortal Hermit glanced at everyone present. "Of course not." The master of civilization of the 10,000 insects civilization kicked the table and said, "The dragon race has gone too far. We didn't do anything to the lone emperor when they started the massacre. All we did was chase him away. But did the dragon race owe us anything? Instead, they became even more aggressive in destroying the shore civilization. We can be killed but not humiliated." The lord of the shore civilization was the most furious. Ever since the dragon race rose to power, they have always been arrogant and domineering. The shore civilization originally wanted to keep the peace, but the dragon race has gone too far. I do not have any hostages in the hands of the dragon race, but I am willing to accompany you to catch up with the dragon race and teach them a lesson. We need to let them know that the western region cannot be bullied. Yes, only pain can let the dragon race know the bottom line. Everyone spoke one after another, and their will was very unified. No matter what, they had to catch up and take back their disciples. At the same time, they would teach the dragon race a deep lesson. The South Pole Immortal Hermit sighed in relief. The western region has so many righteous people. Why should we worry about the future? Everyone, follow me. The South Pole Immortal Hermit stood up. At that moment, the red-haired young man standing upright beside him said, "Master, although I am not at the celestial realm, I am willing to accompany the seniors to kill the dragon race and rescue my junior brothers and sisters." Hearing that, the leaders of the various forces looked over with indescribable envy in their eyes. They might not have seen that young man before, but they had definitely heard of him. The eldest disciple of the South Pole Immortal Hermit, Tai Bufan. He was a contemporary elite who had cultivated the Tao of the saber to perfection. He was also the Western region's well-deserved prodigy, the Divine Emperor. None of the prodigies of the other 8 seven-star civilizations were a match for him, so he was recommended as the #1 prodigy of the Western region. His reputation was comparable to that of the lone emperor. The South Pole Immortal Hermit has really taught a good disciple. The master of the Million Insects civilization was envious. I saw with my own eyes just now that your disciple fought a celestial realm giant dragon head-on, and even wounded it. The younger generation will surpass us in time. He is indeed remarkable. This time, he will definitely have a place in the recruitment of the 8-star civilizations. Among the crowd, only the divine flame demonic woman was not impressed. In the past, he might have been the king of prodigies, but now that might not be the case. Suyu had the power to compete with Tai Bufan, and he might even be stronger. In the manner, Suyu had been playing it down and never revealed his true strength. Therefore, his true strength should be higher than what the divine flame demonic woman had witnessed. The South Pole Immortal Hermit was proud of himself. He cupped his fists and said, "You are flattering me. Bufan is still young and needs more training, not praise." Tai Bufan was standing calmly, neither arrogant nor rash. This won him even more praise from the crowd. The South Pole Immortal Hermit looked at the time and said, "Time is of the essence. Let's set off immediately." The dragon race was best at flying. If they were delayed for too long, they might not be able to catch up. Therefore, the group of people charged into the universe. On the other side, after Suyu rushed out of the clouds, he used the ancestral dragon's strange feather at the cost of his ancestral blood. In a breath's time, he caught up with the dragon race that had left the West region. Crash! In the chaotic yin and yang and life and death, Suyu appeared. As far as his eyes could see, dozens of giant dragons were rampaging all the way, smashing all the small civilizations and meteorites along the way. Only when they stopped on a slightly larger civilization did they stop and land on a giant mountain. Dozens of dragons coiled and opened their mouths, spitting out all the people they had captured. Qin Xiener, Senior Sister Yuan, and the others were among them. Those who stole 200 drops of dragon blood stepped forward. The lonely emperor crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked around at the hundreds of people in front of him, his eyes full of contempt. However, no one answered. Because they really didn't steal it. No one. The lonely emperor's eyes were cold. If that's the case, suddenly, he stretched out his dragon claws and pulled over a werewolf martial artist who was closest to him. He pressed him to the ground and said coldly, "From now on, every 10 breaths, I will kill one person until you admit it." As he spoke, a layer of pitch-black dragon breath came out of the dragon claws, roasting the werewolf martial artist until he screamed in agony. The martial artist resisted with all his might, but he couldn't move the dragon claws at all. Bit by bit, he was burned alive by the dragon breath, from the surface of his body to the inside. Finally, he was completely cooked and died. The process was extremely cruel, and it shook their hearts. Just in time, 10 breaths had passed. The lone emperor grabbed another person, and without saying a word, he used his dragon's breath to burn him to death. There was no trace of pity in his eyes, only endless coldness. Everyone shuddered and panicked. They looked at each other, hoping that someone would step forward. But no one did. The lonely emperor snorted. "Their deaths are all because of you. You can't blame me." As he spoke, he grabbed another person. Unfortunately, this time, he caught Qin Xiener. Qin Xiener's eyes were calm and she didn't panic. It was as if she had seen through death. In the Azura civilization, when she became the Azura king, she had killed many people. She was no longer afraid of death. However, at this moment, before she died, she couldn't help but feel a trace of regret. In her mind, she recalled the last scene when she parted ways with Suyu. She recalled Suyu's seemingly calm but lonely eyes when she left. Was I wrong? But he really betrayed me like that. Qin Xiener's heart was still filled with indignation. The lonely emperor showed no mercy. In his dragon claws, a strong dragon breath was burning, and it was about to burn Qin Xian'er alive. However, at this moment, an ethereal, majestic voice pierced through the universe and echoed throughout the chaos galaxy. "Burn her, and I will destroy the entire dragon clan." The voice was unusually calm and confident, as if it was an existence in the dark, looking down at them. The lonely emperor's claws froze. He looked up at the galaxy, searching for the source of the voice. "Who is it? Qi." Suddenly, in the sky above the civilization, a large number of stars rotated, forming a huge vortex. A strong wind blew out from the vortex. Amidst the howling wind, a young man with silver hair and an ice crystal crown on his head floated down slowly. He had a pair of bone-chilling eyes. Although his figure was delicate, he was like a king of darkness who had walked out of the 9 serenities. His entire body was emitting a dangerous aura that made people shudder. The shifting stars. Is that the space realm? Long Taiji looked at the chaotic galaxy, slightly surprised. He hadn't heard of anyone in the world who had mastered the 8 great realms in a long time. The lonely emperor was stunned for a moment, but he didn't think much of it. A mere half-step Dowlord who has mastered the space realm dares to play tricks? So what if I burn her to death? As he spoke, the dragon breath in his claws erupted. Su Yu's eyes turned cold, and the space around him distorted rapidly. Chapter 2377. In an instant, it was as if the heavens and earth were turning upside down. The huge space where Su Yu was distorted. In the next moment, the lone emperor felt the space beneath his claw tremble violently, as if it had been forcefully replaced by someone else. When she looked down, Qin Xian'er had disappeared and was replaced by Su Yu. Spatial displacement. When the dragon's breath was about to hit him, Su Yu switched places with Qin Xian'er with the space substitution technique, so that he could bear the destructive dragon's breath. The lone emperor was slightly stunned. Then, his eyes turned cold. Not only did he spit out dragon breath from his claws, but he also pressed his claws down fiercely. "Ant, you're not worthy of mastering the space realm." Su Yu raised his head. His eyes were as cold as ice as he stared at the lonely emperor's giant dragon head. Scram! With a shake of his arms, his physique at the late stage of the fish-dragon level burst out. The lonely emperor was caught off guard. He didn't expect that a mere half-step Dowlord would possess such a powerful physique. In his moment of carelessness, his dragon claw was pushed away by Su Yu's fist. He suddenly lost his balance and fell to the ground. Although the giant claw had been pushed away, the dragon's breath still landed on Su Yu's body. The terrifying dragon's breath instantly burned all of Su Yu's clothes into ashes. His skin and flesh were like leather in a blazing flame, making sizzling sounds. In the blink of an eye, he was badly mutilated, and his facial features were no longer recognizable. The dragon breath was still spreading on his body, turning him into a burning man. But he didn't make a sound. There was only a creepy silence. In the distance, Qin Xian'er, who had just understood what had happened, saw the scene of Su Yu turning into a man of flames. She stood there in a daze. All the hatred, pain, and confusion in her heart disappeared in an instant. There was only shock and emotion that came from the depths of his soul. It was accompanied by heart-wrenching pain. It was as if the raging flames were also burning Su Yu. Su Yu. Qin Xian'er blurted out in the end, then quickly flew over. Tears fell from her eyes like rain. She couldn't understand why Su Yu would betray her and die for her. Why? She couldn't understand it, and she didn't want to think about it anymore. She just wanted to extinguish the dragon breath on Su Yu's body and ask him personally. Humph! The lone emperor's cold snort sounded like thunder exploding in his ears. Qin Xian'er's delicate body fluttered in the air like a butterfly. Wisps of fresh blood drew a stunning arc as they floated in the air. It was poignant and beautiful, as if it was painting the last and most magnificent picture to the world. At the same time, A dragon claw that covered the sky slammed down, bringing with it an aura of death and sending it into the yellow springs. It was a pity that Qin Xian'er's cultivation was weak. Under the lonely emperor she was like a speck of dust. They could only wait for death without any chance to resist. Despicable race, despicable woman. Is there no one who can save you? The lone king slammed his claw down, wanting to smash Qin Xian'er, who was flying backward. However, another wave of majestic space descended upon them. Beside Qin Xian'er, who was flying, the space distorted, and a figure covered in flames appeared. He held on to Qin Xian'er with one hand and raised his other hand to block the lone emperor's terrifying dragon claw. This claw was the lonely emperor's claw with all his might. How could Su Yu, who was only in his human form, resist it? His body was like a piece of paper as he was pressed down rapidly. Further down was the bottom of the void. Su Yu would definitely be crushed into pieces. At that moment, Su Yu extended a finger and tapped it between Qin Xian'er's eyebrows, entering her body with a space domain. Go, don't look back. Su Yu released his finger and activated the space domain. He didn't even look at Qin Xian'er. It was as if he was talking to the air, to the past, to Qin Xian'er. Perhaps this was the last time he would save Qin Xian'er. In the future, he would never be able to stay by her side. No. Qin Xian'er's heart trembled violently. On the brink of death, her mind suddenly recalled many fragments of memories that she had never had before. It was the effect of the snake gall spiritual liquid. Not only did it help her recall the 4 most profound memories, but at that moment the medicinal power was activated, causing her to recall many weak fragments of memory. Although those fragments were not profound, they were all related to Su Yu. Bit by bit, like a mountain spring, like mist, like a drizzle, they nourished her blank memories. Sweetness, bitterness, longing, all kinds of emotions filled her heart. It turned out that she had loved Su Yu so much. Even after his betrayal, that heart of hers had never changed. However, the space domain had already been activated. Qin Xian'er's body distorted, and she was instantly swept away. At the moment when she was swept away, Qin Xian'er reached out to grab Su Yu. However, she only grabbed a jade bottle that was floating around him. With a loud bang, Qin Xian'er was taken away in an instant, far away from the boundless starry region. She fell on an abandoned civilization. Ignoring the injuries on her body, she crawled up in a sorry state. Su Yu. Qin Xian'er crawled up and wiped away her tears. She tried to fly back to save Su Yu. Only then did she realize that she had not grabbed nothing. Feeling the foreign object in her palm, she turned her head and saw that it was the 5th bottle of spiritual liquid that she had never drunk. She was startled, but then drank it without hesitation. She couldn't wait to know what happened to her and Su Yu in the end. Did Su Yu regret it? After a sharp and sweet taste of blood, her mind was stung and an image appeared. In the image, Su Yu's face was pale, and blood was flowing from the corners of his mouth. He was standing in front of her with a sad smile. Beside her, a middle-aged man in a yellow robe was sneering and pitying. No. I poisoned Su Yu? Qin Xian'er covered her mouth, and her mind was filled with thunder. Moreover, Su Yu knew that it was poisonous, but he still chose to die. She had already killed Su Yu once. She had used her own hands to kill him once. He owed her once, and he had already repaid it with his life. Now, he was still using his own life to save her. A great sense of regret reverberated in her heart. She shouldn't have been so careless, so impulsive, so heartless. She would never trust him again. That sentence might be the last thing she said to Su Yu. No! Qin Xian'er's heart was filled with great regret. If she could go back in time, she would never say those words again. Regardless of her injuries, she flew away, eager to see Su Yu again. She wanted to apologize to him, say thank you, and say that she didn't hate him. However, her injuries were too severe, and she didn't even have the strength to break through the civilization, so she fell from the sky. She tried several times, but failed halfway. She had to stop to rest, and while resting, she sobbed with regret. On the other side, the moment he sent Qin Xianer away, he was slammed into the bottom of the void by a dragon claw. The void shook the heavens, and the Milky Way of the universe was swept back. The majestic waves reverberated between the heavens and the earth, unable to subside for a long time. The Milky Way in the distance was surging, rolling toward the depths of the universe. The power of this palm had already reached the early stage of the celestial realm. No one could stop it, and nothing could stop it. All living beings under its claws had no chance of survival. The universe was silent, and only the sound of the void could be heard. The lonely emperor raised his dragon claw, shaking it lightly. He let out a long sigh. It's finally quiet. Long Taiji looked on coldly from the sidelines, laughing. Lowly humans, this is the result of offending your superiors. The lonely emperor was disdainful. You asked for it, don't blame me. Also, send a dragon to find that lowly human woman. There's no need to bring her back, just kill her. His murderous intent was evident. He wouldn't let a single one of them go. But right at that moment, from the deep, dark, and lightless bottom of the void, a blinding light appeared without warning. Not only did it illuminate the entire bottom of the void, but it even illuminated the starry sky that was as dark as ink. It was as if there was a sun rising from the bottom of the void. What's going on? The lonely emperor frowned. His huge dragon eyes looked against the blinding light, and he saw a blurry figure, shrouded in powerful lightning, slowly walking up from the bottom of the void. His steps were slow and rhythmic. It was like a heartbeat. Under his gaze, the sun finally rose. He didn't die. The lonely emperor was shocked. Not only was Su Yu not dead, but the wounds on his body that had been burned by the dragon's breath had also disappeared. His left hand was upright and his right hand was slightly raised. His fist was tightly clenched, as if he was holding on to something. His eyes were also lowered as he stared at the fist. His head was lowered, and no one could see the expression on his face. Interesting. There are very few people of the same age who can withstand my claw and not die, the lonely emperor said proudly. Fine, I'll be more serious and grant you death. As he spoke, the lonely emperor slammed his claw down again. Compared to the last time, not only did it strike with full force, but it also carried a strong dragon's breath. Bang! Su Yu didn't even lift his head, only his left arm. The moment he lifted his arm, his body rapidly changed. From a human body, it rapidly transformed into a dark golden half-dragon body. The dark golden dragon claw easily blocked the lonely emperor's attack. At the same time, the dragon claw released a black dragon's breath. Creak! Ah! The lonely emperor suddenly screamed and hurriedly retracted his dragon claw. One could see that there were burn marks on its claws. A dragon had been burned by a human's dragon's breath? Such a strange story was rarely seen in this world. The lonely emperor staggered, staring at Su Yu's current form. Half human, half dragon. Half dragon body? The lonely emperor was shocked and angry. He was angry that a human had dared to use dragon materials to cultivate the secret technique of half-dragon transformation. He was shocked that, as a pure dragon, his physique was slightly inferior to that of a mere half-dragon. Long Taizu's eyes shone brightly, and a trace of deep surprise lingered in the depths of his eyes. It seemed that Su Yu's half-dragon body had reminded him of something. Su Yu's eyes were calm, and within that calmness, there was an icy aura that made people tremble with fear. He opened his palm, and it was the blood that Qin Xianer had spat out. 23 drops in total. Su Yu lowered his head, and his tone was indescribably cold. I said, don't hurt her. Since you're so stubborn, I'll repay you with a drop of blood, a dragon. He raised his head, and a pair of golden eyes shot out waves of murderous light that tore through the sky. Chapter 2378. With a wave of his hand, the heaven-destroying rod appeared. Seeing the rod, the lonely emperor's expression changed drastically. He immediately recognized it and said fiercely, "You are the one who stole the dragon emperor's blood?" That person who defeated him and seized the dragon blood was actually a nobody at the half-step Dalord realm? The lonely emperor could not believe it. Su Yu ignored him, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Grow! The heaven-destroying rod suddenly became 10 feet long and was lightly grasped in his hand. Fine. I'll teach you a lesson today. The lonely emperor was not resigned to his failure at the underground market. He said to Long Taiji, "Don't do anything. Let me do it myself." Long Taiji nodded in agreement. The growth of the dragon clan had always been cruel. From the moment they were born, they began to train themselves. Their way of training was not through sparring, but by finding enemies with similar abilities to fight to the death. In the midst of death, they constantly stimulated their various potentials, allowing their abilities to rise again and again. Hence, the dragon clan's population had always been small. There was only one prince in this generation of the dragon clan. There had been 4 princes in the beginning, but all of them had died in the cruel training, unable to return alive. The lonely emperor was the last and also the strongest. Long Taiji felt that the human before him was quite powerful. He should be able to become a training opportunity for the lonely emperor, a stepping stone for him to ascend again. "Don't worry and fight," Long Taiji said. The lonely emperor gripped his dragon claw and grinned. He took out a very unique weapon. It was a whip made of dragon tendons. The whip released a thick dragon aura. With just a slight hit, the dragon aura would enter the body and kill. "You were careless last time. This time, it won't be so easy for you to escape." The lonely emperor did not think that Su Yu's abilities had improved much in just a few days. Last time, Su Yu had escaped when he was no match for the lonely emperor. This time, he could not escape even if he wanted to. Bang! Su Yu did not listen to his nonsense. He raised the heaven-destroying rod and struck the lonely emperor's head. The lonely emperor's lips curled into a mocking smile. "I'll let you have a taste of the dragon's soul whip first." Slap! With a flick of his wrist, the dragon's soul whip twisted its body like a moving snake, then whipped toward Su Yu's waist at a tricky angle. Along the way, there was a terrifying dragon aura. If Su Yu's current half-dragon body was hit, he would be crippled even if he didn't die. However, Su Yu's eyes were calm and unwavering. It was as if he only had eyes for the lonely emperor. In his mind, the scene of the lone emperor heavily injuring him replayed. He owed Qin Xian'er enough in this life, but he didn't even have the ability to protect her face to face. Thinking of this, his heart turned even colder. Even his eyes were like 2 ice-cold abysses, shooting out a gaze that froze the air. Die! Su Yu ignored the whip lashing at his waist, which was now a bloody mess. He ignored the dragon breath that had entered his body and burned all of his internal organs. He ignored the extreme pain. He had only one thing to do. And that was to kill the lonely emperor. Bang! The heaven-exterminating rod smashed down with a piercingly cold might. The lonely emperor's face changed slightly. He thought that Su Yu would change from offense to defense, but he didn't expect it to be a situation where both sides were injured. His heart skipped a beat, and he didn't have time to retract the dragon's soul whip. Instead, he punched out with a single fist. Tyrannical dragon Tao-destroying fist. All of a sudden, 10,000 dragons roared and thunder rumbled. The momentum was extremely terrifying. That day, it was this punch that destroyed the entire barrier of light and killed many innocent people. Su Yu was fearless when he used the same move that day. He smashed down with the heaven-exterminating rod. Pound! The deafening sound shook the universe and stirred up the void. All of a sudden, the Xing River was turbulent, engulfing the abandoned civilizations and meteorites in all directions. The dragon roar between the lonely emperor's fists was completely shattered by the rod. The dragon scales on his fists were smashed off, revealing the blood-red dragon flesh. The lonely emperor's fists were burning with pain, and his whole arm was numb and unresponsive. The hardness of the heaven-exterminating rod was beyond his imagination. "That's all you've got," the lonely emperor sneered. "If you don't use all your strength, you won't be able to protect the lowly human woman like you." His words were full of mockery. Su Yu's eyes were calm. "You're already clamoring before it has even started?" The lonely emperor was stunned. Hadn't started? What did that mean? Su Yu's roar suddenly sounded in his ears. Heavy. He frantically instilled the power of desolation into the heaven-exterminating rod, making its weight 100 times heavier. Even he couldn't bear such a weight. Before the lonely emperor understood what was going on, he suddenly felt an unstoppable force coming from his fists. The heaven-exterminating rod had suddenly become extremely heavy. It was so heavy that he couldn't stop it even with all the dragon power he had. Crack! His arm was crushed by the heaven-exterminating rod on the spot. Bang! The heaven-exterminating rod smashed down on his long dragon body. Ah! The sound of bones breaking could be heard, passing through his body like musical notes. In an instant, the bones in the lonely emperor's body were smashed into several pieces. Under the incomparably heavy pressure of the heaven-exterminating rod, he continued to sink into the bottom of the void. This scene caught Long Taiji and the others by surprise. Lonely Emperor! A dragon turned pale with fright, wanting to rush over to help. But Long Taiji stopped him. "This is the Lonely Emperor's training. Do not interfere unless it is absolutely necessary." "But the Lonely Emperor," Long Taiji said calmly, "if the Lonely Emperor was defeated so easily, how could he be qualified to be the heir of the Dragon Emperor? What he has shown is just the tip of the iceberg." He turned to stare at Su Yu. "To think that the human race has such a genius. How rare! In any other era, he could be the leader of the human race. But unfortunately, he met the Lonely Emperor. He is ultimately just a stepping stone on the Lonely Emperor's path to greatness." On the battlefield, Su Yu's eyes were cold. He held the heaven-exterminating rod in his hand and continued to press down. Until he was pressed into the bottom of the void, the Lonely Emperor's eyes were filled with anger. He felt as if he had been bitten by an ant. "That's enough! Berserk Dragon Transformation!" The Lonely Emperor's eyes suddenly turned red. The dragon heart in his body was beating even faster. His dragon body continued to expand at a speed visible to the naked eye. His dragon body, which was originally only 10,000 feet long, instantly became 10,000 feet long. What was even more strange was that the broken bones in his body were burrowing out of his body, turning into bone spikes that stuck to the surface of his body. From afar, he looked like a dragon with bone spikes all over his body. The broken bones in his body were also healing in an instant. Scram! The Lonely Emperor's giant dragon body shook violently, and he actually pulled the heaven-exterminating rod away. A myriad of forces caused huge waves to form in the entire void. Long Taiji, who was watching from above, revealed a gratified expression. "This is the real Lonely Emperor, the #1 genius of the southern region." Chapter 2379. On the other hand, Su Yu held the heaven-destroying rod in his hand. He stood in the turbulent void like a divine needle, unaffected. "What's up with that rod?" Su Yu was puzzled. At the bottom of the void, the lone emperor, covered in bone spikes, stared at Su Yu. "You forced me to use the Berserk Dragon transformation. You lowly ant, you can die without regrets." Su Yu did not say a word. He continued to imbue the heaven-destroying rod with primordial energy. Thin. The heaven-destroying rod immediately became as thin as an embroidery needle. Then, Su Yu pointed the embroidery at the enormous body of the quasi-lonely emperor and said slowly, "Grow." Swoosh! The embroidery needle immediately became tens of thousands of feet long, piercing the lone emperor's huge dragon body. Moreover, it was aimed at his heart. He had the experience of searching for the ancestral dragon's heart. He was very clear about the structure of a dragon's body. Ding, with a burst of sparks, the embroidery needle was nailed to a huge dragon scale, unable to penetrate any further. The lone emperor's blood-red eyes were filled with contempt. You have yet to understand the power of the berserk dragon transformation. His body shook violently. A monstrous force swept the embroidery needle away. It could not penetrate his body at all. After the berserk dragon transformation, the lone emperor's dragon body was 10 times stronger. His scales could no longer be knocked off as easily as before. Accept your death, lowly human. The lone emperor swept his tail, which was covered in ferocious bone spikes. Su Yu retracted the heaven-destroying rod, blocking in front of his chest. With a rumble, he was sent flying by the giant tail. The lone emperor's eyes were filled with pity. Goodbye! The bone spikes on his tail suddenly shot out, piercing toward Su Yu. The bone spur was 100 feet thick, and it was powerful enough to crush Su Yu to death. But Su Yu's eyes were calm as he silently recited the incantation. The incantation was extremely ancient, and it was the ancient language of the dragon race. Long Taiji, who had thought that the battle was over, suddenly turned pale. He said in disbelief, This is the secret technique passed down from generation to generation in the previous dynasty." He did not finish his sentence, because Su Yu had already activated it. "Dragon! Blood! Boiling! Ting!" As the words were spoken, the dragon blood in the bodies of all the dragons present seemed to have been awakened. It caused them to start burning from the inside out. As Tao lords of the celestial realm, they were able to immediately suppress this mysterious ancient flame. However, they were unable to suppress the fear they felt towards the ancient past. If they were already in such a state, the lone emperor's cultivation level was not as high as theirs, and it was even more so. Its huge dragon body suddenly burst into flames. It tried hard to extinguish the flames, but to no avail. The boundless flames burned him to the point of unbearable pain. He roared repeatedly, "Boiling dragon blood, one of the secret arts of the previous generation's royal family. How did you learn it? How could you?" At that moment, Su Yu's face was deathly pale. This technique originated from Princess Linglong. She had used it before, and Su Yu had secretly learned it. However, this technique required an extremely large amount of dragon blood as the price to activate. More than half of the 200 drops of Dragon Emperor blood that had been fused into his body had been used up by this technique. Even the Dragon Monarch had to be cautious when executing this technique. However, as long as he could kill the lone emperor, it didn't matter how big the price was. Under the blazing fire, the dragon scales on the surface of the lonely emperor's body were peeled off one after another, revealing his badly mutilated dragon flesh. Su Yu looked at it coldly. Holding the heaven-destroying rod in his hand, he once again stabbed it like an embroidery needle. Poof! The 100,000-foot-long embroidery needle finally pierced through the dragon's body and heart. Ah! The lonely emperor let out a heart-wrenching roar. He felt his life slipping away, and he finally felt the threat of death. Second transformation of the raging dragon. The lonely emperor's blood-red eyes suddenly turned pale. The flesh and blood of his 100,000-foot-long dragon body collapsed on its own, leaving behind only a complete dragon skeleton. Moreover, the skeleton grew rapidly, replacing the missing flesh and blood. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a skeletal dragon. Even his heart had turned into extremely hard bones. As such, his heart was saved, and he was spared from death. "You're courting death." The lonely emperor was completely exposed, or rather, he felt a trace of fear. This human was way too mysterious and way too frightening. If he hadn't successfully cultivated the second transformation of the raging dragon not long ago, he would have died today. An unprecedented murderous intent reverberated in his heart. He had to die, he had to die. Feeling the great threat, the lonely emperor's murderous intent rose. Soul burial of 10,000 bones. A pale white flame suddenly shot out from his 100,000-foot-long dragon body. It was a mysterious flame that was 100 times more terrifying than the dragon's breath. Even from a distance, Su Yu could feel the scorching heat from his half-dragon body. If he was touched by the pale white flame, his soul would be destroyed. However, the lonely emperor had underestimated the heaven-destroying rod. This was a sword that could be mentioned in the same breath as the royal dragon sword. "Thicken!" he bellowed, and the heaven-destroying rod suddenly became as thick as an arm. The heaven-destroying rod, which had pierced through the lonely emperor's heart, expanded several times without any hindrance. Naturally, the bony heart was crushed into pieces. The pain from the distance made the lonely emperor even more irritable. He charged forward with a furious roar. "Die!" Accompanying him was the extremely dangerous pale white flame. Su Yu's expression was cold. He held the heaven-destroying rod with both hands and exerted all his strength. Rise! Rumble! A shocking scene appeared. Su Yu had lifted the lonely emperor, who was 100,000 feet tall. It was like lifting a wooden fork with a snake on it. Compared to the 100,000-foot-tall lonely emperor, Su Yu was as small as a speck of dust. At this moment, Su Yu had lifted the lonely emperor into the air with a shocking power, and then smashed him down. Bang! The 100,000-foot-tall dragon body was smashed into the ground, causing the Star River to tremble and the void to roar. The lonely emperor's dignity as the #1 heaven ruler of the southern region had been smashed to smithereens. "Ah! The human race, I will destroy you!" the lonely emperor roared. But before he could get up, Su Yu lifted him up again and smashed him down again. Bang! Ah! The human race, Bang! The human race, bang, bang, bang. The crowd of dragons above watched as the lonely emperor was swung around on the ground by Su Yu's rod. The lonely emperor no longer looked like the #1 heaven ruler of the southern region. He looked like a dead dog. At first, he could still roar, but his voice grew weaker and weaker. Until now, he had fainted from the fall. They could not believe that the most powerful heaven ruler of the current generation of the dragon race had been defeated so miserably by a human. Long Taiji was shocked, his murderous intent rising. This person could not be allowed to live. When he grew up in the future, he would definitely be a figure comparable to the Dragon Emperor. Moreover, he had the shadow of the previous royal family of the dragon race. No matter what, he could not be allowed to live in this world. "Humans, stop," Long Taiji said arrogantly. His tone was not a request, but an order. As he spoke, he flicked a finger at Su Yu. A breath and a thought of a great venerable realm path master was terrifying, let alone a flick. It looked like he was trying to stop Su Yu, but he was actually trying to kill him. Chapter 2380. Get lost. Su Yu squinted his eyes and took out the insect ancestor's finger. At the same time, he sacrificed a drop of the insect ancestor's blood essence to crush it. All of a sudden, a boundless finger shadow that was tens of millions of zhang long suddenly appeared in the galaxy. The finger shadow was majestic, covering the sky and earth. The entire Milky Way in the universe trembled. The void was split into two by the finger shadow. The stars in the sky were thrown into chaos, and the yin and yang of the universe were turned upside down. Dozens of giant dragons were scattered by the destructive energy emitted by the finger shadow. Even Long Taiji, who was at the great venerable level, could not withstand the ancient ancestor level power. The finger shadow pierced through the galaxy and pointed directly at Long Taiji. All of a sudden, Long Taiji's dragon heart thumped wildly. His muscles tightened, like an ant in front of a monstrous flood. In the face of such a disaster, he was insignificant. His pupils shrank and his scalp went numb. At this critical moment, he had no time to think. He grabbed a giant dragon beside him and used it as a shield. Puff! However, under the finger shadow, The so-called strong dragon was just a piece of paper. He was easily crushed into a rain of blood. Long Taiji was extremely shocked. His heart was filled with fear. What was that finger? How could it have such terrifying power? He suddenly remembered what Suyu had said. Injure that human woman, and he would destroy the entire dragon clan. Now that he thought about it, he realized that it was not a threat. He could really do it. Under the ancestor-level power, even the Dragon Emperor might not be able to withstand it. His heart was shrouded by death, and he was filled with unprecedented fear. Come here. He grabbed another nearby dragon with his dragon claw and used him as a shield. With a blood-curdling scream, the dragon was killed on the spot. At this moment, he did not have the demeanor of one of the top 3 experts of the dragon clan. He was madly dragging his companions down with him, using their flesh and blood to block the terrifying finger shadow. It was not until 8 giant dragons were sacrificed that the finger shadow gradually weakened. Even so, when it hit Long Taiji, half of his body was still destroyed. He was almost wiped out from this world. Having escaped death by luck, Long Taiji panted heavily and stared at Suyu, still in shock. His eyes were filled with deep fear. Suyu did not even look at him. He only looked at the lonely emperor under his feet and said coldly, "No one can save you." Boom! With a flick of his palm, Suyu once again lifted him up and smashed him onto the ground. Long Taiji and the others only watched from the side, but they did not dare to stop them anymore. He could only watch as the lone emperor was smashed again and again until he was a bloody mess. "Save me!" the lone emperor pleaded weakly. There was no longer any arrogance or pride in his eyes. But how could Long Taiji and the others dare to make a move? However, if they watched the lone emperor die before their eyes, they would not be able to escape death when they returned. There was only one outcome for them: to be executed by the Dragon Emperor. Seeing that the lone emperor was getting weaker and weaker and was on the verge of death, Long Taiji gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, "Human, stop now. It's not too late to regret. If you really kill the lone emperor, you and your human race, your women, your family, your friends, and the place you used to live will be razed to the ground by the dragon tribe." That sonorous and powerful threatening voice roared across the world. Every sentence was filled with bone-chilling hatred and a deep threat. With the strength of the dragon race, they could indeed wipe out the human race, Suyu's family and friends, and all the civilizations that he had stayed in. "So, this is why I have to kill all of you," Suyu said coldly without turning back. Even at this moment they still did not understand where they had gone wrong. They were still using the people and things that Suyu cared about to threaten him. If he did not wipe out such a dragon race, could he wait for them to recover and come back to destroy the people and things that he cared about? Die. Suyu once again used his finger. Long Taiji's scalp turned numb. Just what was that thing? How could it be activated continuously? But with his previous experience, Long Taiji was mentally prepared. He shouted anxiously, "Form the great formation of 10,000 dragons." The remaining 18 giant dragons, with Long Taiji in the center, began to chant the ancient dragon language of the dragon tribe. All of the giant dragons' dragon scales had a strange blood-red color. The 18 dragons each stood in a position, forming a very strange symbol. The finger shadow came crashing down, but the talisman characters floated and actually blocked it. However, it was only able to block for a moment before the finger shadow continued to move forward and crushed the giant dragon at the front into minced meat. Then came the second and third dragons. Long Taiji hid at the back, shouting, "Save the lone emperor." He and the 3 giant dragons pulled away from the symbol, rushing toward Suyu. Long Taiji grabbed the lone emperor's dragon horn, using all his strength to pull it out from the heaven-destroying rod. At once, dragon blood splattered everywhere. In his weakened state, the lone emperor let out a pathetic groan. But at least he was saved. Suyu's gaze turned cold. He was about to give chase when Long Taiji shouted, "Stop him." The two giant dragons rushed toward Suyu in fear, while Long Taiji quickly escaped with the lone emperor. At that moment, the finger continued to crush the giant dragons. Its energy was exhausted, and it finally collapsed. The 10 giant dragons that were lucky enough to survive followed Long Taiji, fleeing in panic. Only the 2 giant dragons were left behind to block Suyu. Human, stop before you go too far. Otherwise, you will not be able to bear the consequences. The 2 giant dragons shouted angrily. What did it mean to stop before going too far? If Suyu did not have the ability to fight them, if Suyu was really just an insignificant ant, would they stop before going too far? No. Qin Xianer would be cruelly killed by them, and Suyu would be cruelly killed by them. When it was their turn to be hunted down, they asked Suyu to stop before going too far. The ones who are least qualified to tell me to stop before going too far are you. Suyu retrieved the bizarre feather of the ancestral dragon and injected a drop of the insect ancestor's blood essence into it. Creak. The bizarre feather of the ancestral dragon moved, drawing a strange arc in the air. The arc passed through the giant bodies of the 2 giant dragons, cutting them in half as easily as if they were pieces of paper. As dragon blood soared into the sky, Suyu, who was covered in dragon blood, cut through the air and caught up with the group of dragons. The dragons, who had already fled far away and felt slightly safe, all shuddered when they sensed the incomparably cold figure behind them. Turning their heads to look, they saw a person covered in blood, like a blood demon that had crawled out of the 9 serenities, following closely behind them. A chill, as if they had fallen into an icehouse, welled up in their hearts at the same time. The lone emperor's teeth were chattering, and he said, Long Taiji, quickly go and tell him that I, the lone emperor, was wrong. Long Taiji's heart trembled. It's too late. If he had a choice, he would definitely not have allowed the lone emperor to come to the North Shore civilization. Moreover, he would not have bullied the weak to take revenge on the North Shore civilization. Or, even if the lone emperor had listened to the warning of the human and not harmed the human girl, there would still have been a way to salvage the situation. It was too late for regrets now. Looking at the blood shadow chasing after them, Long Taiji felt that the one chasing after them was not some half-step Tao master human, but an extremely ferocious being who was on par with the Dragon Emperor. You shouldn't have attacked that human girl. Long Taiji was filled with regret. Why had he not stopped the lone emperor at that time? If it was a pity that there were no ifs. All of you, stay here. Long Taiji shouted at the remaining 10 giant dragons. The 10 giant dragons were extremely unwilling to accept this. Why? It was clearly the lone emperor's fault. They had not done anything, so why should they pay for the lone emperor's mistake? If they stayed here, they would definitely die. However, the hierarchy of the Dragon Clan was strict, and they could not ignore Long Taiji's words. Filled with extreme unwillingness, they could only choose to stay. They turned around and looked at the blood shadow, who was chasing after them rapidly. All of the giant dragons swallowed hard, their hearts filled with fear. Die. They would definitely die. The giant dragons' giant bodies could not help but tremble. The moment before death had instead stimulated their desire to live. Go all out, one of the late-stage heaven-tier giant dragons said with a trembling voice. The other giant dragons mustered their courage and prepared to face death. However, at this moment, the attacking blood shadow shouted coldly, "Those who surrender will not be killed, but those who resist will be killed without mercy." The 2 attacks had already killed 21 giant dragons. If the lone emperor and Long Taiji were killed, it would be 20 dragons. Just as he had said, 1 drop of blood, 1 dragon. Making Xian spit out 23 drops of blood would mean killing 23 dragons. The 10 dragons in front of them could be killed or not. The 10 giant dragons, who had already made up their minds to die, immediately began to struggle. The Dragon Clan was the most noble and proud clan in the Outer Realm. Ever since the Dragon Clan became strong, there had never been a situation where they submitted to another race. Thus, they refused to surrender psychologically. However, the reality was that their bodies were not under their control at all. I surrender. I surrender too. The dragons that were hundreds of thousands of feet tall all prostrated themselves on the ground. Their dragon claws extended forward, their heads lowered. Suyu flew over their heads and shouted, "Hand over the dragon pearls." The dragon pearls were the core of the dragon clan and the key to their lives. Once they were controlled by someone, their lives would be in the hands of someone else. However, none of the giant dragons dared to resist, all of them handing over the dragon pearls. Suyu clenched his hand, grabbing all 10 dragon pearls in his palm. "Follow me." Suyu used the ancestral dragon's bizarre feathers, bringing the 10 giant dragons with him. In an instant, he cut through yin and yang and life and death, catching up to Long Taiji and the others, who had long since escaped. The 10 giant dragons were extremely shocked. What kind of nature-defying divine technique was this? He could change yin and yang and life and death with a single thought? Long Taiji was equally shocked. At this moment, he had already escaped to a giant transportation spell. That was a special transportation spell built by the Dragon Clan that led to the various civilizations of the southern region. As long as they escaped, they could immediately head to the large-scale Dragon Clan civilization and receive the protection of many strong fighters. They would be able to escape with their lives. However, what caused Long Taiji to despair was that Suyu had led the 10 giant dragons to block the transportation spell. What made him even more desperate was that after Suyu had appeared, he had smashed the transportation spell with his rod and destroyed it, completely cutting off Long Taiji's hope of escaping. Looking at the 10 giant dragons that had betrayed him, he followed closely behind Suyu. Looking at the heavily injured lonely emperor, Long Taiji said with grief and indignation, "Human, you are too ruthless. We only injured your woman. Do you really have to kill us like this?" Suyu's expression was indifferent as he said coldly, "I am ruthless because you are even more ruthless." If Suyu did not have the insect ancestor's finger, blood essence, and ancestral dragon's bizarre feathers, would they have let Suyu and Qin Xian'er off? No, even if Qin Xian'er was injured, they would not have let her off. They would have found Qin Xian'er and killed her on the spot. At that time, did they ever think of killing them? No. Only when the same fate befell on their heads would they angrily berate others for being ruthless and ruthless. They would never consider whether what they had done was right or wrong. Was there a need to forgive such an enemy? If they were forgiven today, they would gather their strength and come back to kill them tomorrow. Chapter 2381. Kindness is only given to friends and kind people. Only cruelty is left for the enemy. Suyu's expression was cold as he took out the insect ancestor's finger. Long Taiji's eyes were filled with grief and indignation. The lonely emperor was also furious. "Can't I admit my mistake? Why do you have to be so cruel?" Even at the brink of death, he still spoke in the same tone, not realizing what he had done wrong. How could Suyu convince himself to forgive such a person? "Die," Suyu said coldly as he moved the finger. In desperation, the lonely emperor's will to live erupted. "I still have to go to the 8-star civilization, to lead the royal family and to rule the world. I cannot die." His eyes were filled with determination as he stared at Long Taiji's back. "Long Taiji, you will definitely die. Why don't you grant my wish?" Long Taiji was focused on guarding against Suyu. Why would he be wary of the lonely emperor? Hearing his crazed words, he knew something was wrong. "What are you going to do, Creek?" What answered him was a dragon claw that had penetrated his heart. Long Taiji looked at the dragon claw that had penetrated his chest in disbelief. His heart was beating in the dragon claw. Creak. The lonely emperor retracted his dragon claw and stared at the heart in his hand. He said mercilessly and cruelly, "You know the reason why the dragon emperor is so powerful. I am merely imitating the dragon emperor and undergoing nirvana." Long Taiji was panting heavily, his life force weakening bit by bit. He wanted to laugh, but he could not. He had thought he would die at Su Yu's hands. He had not expected to die at the hands of the person he wanted to protect. Was this a tragedy, or was this a trap of his own making? Dragon Emperor, so you really taught him the Dragon Abyss treasure scroll. Long Taiji looked up at the empty sky and laughed bitterly. Even if I did not have this day, I would have ended up like this sooner or later, right? The speaker did not mean it, but the listener knew. Others might not know what the Dragon Abyss treasure scroll was, but how could Su Yu not know? It was the supreme secret book that the epic-making dragon had stolen from the dragon race. A mysterious book from the Tao Abyss. The dragon ancestor had obtained this book from an ordinary divine dragon and had grown into one of the 9 great divine ancestors. The previous generation of the dragon clan's royal family had encountered all sorts of accidents as they chased after the epic-making dragon who had stolen the book. As a result, the dragon emperor had fallen and the princess had perished. However, since the Dragon Abyss treasure scroll had been snatched away by the epic-making dragon, where did the dragon sovereign get it from? What was the relationship between the current dragon emperor and the epic-making dragons? Was the previous dragon emperor really killed by the epic-making dragon alone? It was a pity that the soul of the epic-making dragon had already been transformed by Su Yu's soul. Otherwise, he would have been able to discover many secrets through soul searching. The lone emperor said eerily, "Since you know, then I won't hold back." Ancestral dragon Nirvana. The lone emperor roared. He opened his mouth and swallowed the entire heart. Bang bang, immediately, the sound of 2 hearts beating could be heard in his body. Vortexes the size of fists appeared on the surface of the lone emperor's body, producing a targeted suction force. Long Taiji's body turned into sparkling specks of light and was devoured by hundreds of whirlpools, merging into the lone emperor body. As for the lone emperor, his aura rose rapidly. From the late stage of the fish dragon realm, he instantly rose to the early stage of the celestial being realm, and then continued to soar. In a few breaths' time, he successfully reached the peak of the celestial being realm. He was only a step away from advancing to the great venerable realm. The pupils of the 10 giant dragons shrank, their hearts filled with fear. This was the ultimate forbidden technique of the Dragon Abyss treasure scroll, Ancestral Dragon Nirvana. It was said that if the descendants of the ancestral dragon devoured enough of their own kind, there was a chance that a trace of the ancestral dragon's bloodline would be born in their bodies. With the horror of the ancestral dragon, even a trace of the ancestral dragon's bloodline could shake the heavens and the earth. Even if the bloodline of the ancestral dragon was not born, one could still use this technique to absorb the other party's essence and make it his own. However, this technique was too evil, and it had long been listed as a forbidden technique by the ancestral dragon, forbidding the descendants from cultivating it. It was also said that once the forbidden technique was used, the dragon clan would be exterminated. Once the cultivation began, the dragon clan would be exterminated. As for the reason, the ancestral dragon did not mention it. However, the royal family of the dragon clan scrupulously abided by the ancestral teachings. Even when the dragon clan had declined, they had never disobeyed the ancestral dragon Ming Lin. Only the current dragon emperor cultivated this forbidden technique on his own and achieved glory that had never been achieved by the previous dragon emperors. The lone emperor's cultivation had reached the late stage of the celestial being realm, which was enough to show how overbearing this technique was. His cultivation would continue to rise, and he would become a great venerable. What was more worrying was that there was a certain chance that the ancestral dragon's bloodline would appear. Once that happened, the mere finger of the insect ancestor would be no match for it. Su Yu's eyes were cold, and he drew a line in the air with one hand. Between the heavens and the earth, 6 giant gates that blotted out the sky suddenly appeared. Every single one of them represented a kind of concept. Reincarnation. Su Yu was like a fairy who had mastered the 6 paths. He pointed his 5 fingers in succession, and the 6 paths of reincarnation gates opened with a loud rumble. From the 6 giant gates, different colored fairy mists flowed out, and they were filled with mysterious meanings. The law of reincarnation? The 10 giant dragons' scalps went numb. Reincarnation only existed in legends. Very few people even knew whether it existed, let alone cultivating it. However, Su Yu had not only cultivated it, but he had also comprehended its law. Nirvana, you have to ask for my permission first. Su Yu's palm was full of reincarnation. The 6 paths of reincarnation passed through the lone emperor's body. Every time the 6 paths of reincarnation passed through the lone emperor's body, it caused him to retreat a little. When the 6 paths of reincarnation passed through the lone emperor's body, he was forcefully interrupted. What? The lone emperor spat out a heart. His cultivation, which was about to break through the great venerable realm, rapidly fell back to the fish-dragon later stage like a receding tide. How is this possible? The lone emperor looked at the beating heart of the great venerable realm on the ground in disbelief. The secret technique of the Dragon Abyss Treasure Scroll was forcefully interrupted. This was impossible, absolutely impossible. Boom. Su Yu pressed his palm, and the 6 paths of reincarnation gate sank into the bottom of the void. He stood with one hand behind his back, and his silver hair was dancing wildly. His cold eyes were looking down on the world, as if he was the supreme ruler of the absolute beginning, looking down on thousands of lives. Nirvana of the ancestral dragon, you are not worthy. Su Yu looked down at him like a god, depriving a mortal of the right to become a god. The lone emperor raised his head suddenly, his eyes filled with hatred. Su Yu, I curse you to die a horrible death. Puff. The lone emperor, who knew he was going to die, used his cultivation and dragon blood to condense a curse on his chest before he died. He used it to activate the curse in the ancient language of the dragon clan of the royal family. Suddenly, Su Yu felt a burning sensation on his chest. A ferocious black dragon was imprinted on his chest. The lone emperor's dragon body was rapidly deteriorating, and he was on the verge of death. Ha ha, this is one of the greatest curses of the dragon clan. It will slowly devour your cultivation, your flesh, and you will die a slow, painful death. You will die a worse death than me. The lone emperor laughed at the sky, his laughter filled with hatred. However, he did not laugh for long. This was because, before the black dragon curse could take effect, a blood crystal suddenly emerged from Su Yu's body. The blood crystal turned into a beautiful, crystal-clear dragon head, devouring the black dragon curse in large mouthfuls. The black dragon curse hurriedly fled in all directions within Su Yu's body. However, it could not escape the snow-white dragon head, which devoured it bit by bit. The black dragon curse wanted to resist, but it was obviously not at the same level as the dragon head. The black dragon curse tried to bite the snow-white dragon head, but it did not leave a single scratch. However, the white dragon bit off a large chunk. In the end, the black dragon curse was devoured, not even a scrap was left. The lone emperor was stunned, unable to believe his eyes. The life and death curse. The peerless curse passed down from generation to generation of the dragon clan? Impossible, that is a curse that only the princess of the dragon clan can cast. However, there is no princess in this empire. There was no princess in this empire, but there was in the previous empire. Princess Linglong had cast a life and death curse on Su Yu. The content of the curse was that if Princess Linglong died, Su Yu would definitely die. On the other hand, if Su Yu died, she would not. Su Yu had not cared about the life and death curse for a long time. He did not expect it to be like this. To me, everything you do is the tricks of an ant, Su Yu said indifferently. The 10 giant dragons behind him could not help but feel pity for him. The lone emperor was powerful, but he was restrained by Su Yu in every aspect. Even the curse, which had been formed with his cultivation and flesh before his death, was restrained by Su Yu. Wasn't this too tragic? Ah, am I, the lone emperor, destined to die like this? The lone emperor could not help but let out an angry roar. Su Yu's eyes turned cold, and he lashed out with the heaven-destroying rod, smashing the lone emperor into mush on the spot. Are you waiting for someone to save you? Su Yu said coldly as he shook off the dragon blood on the heaven-destroying rod. Looking around, Su Yu kept Long Taiji's heart. After thinking for a moment, he sealed it in ice. As long as the ice was unsealed, the heart could be revived. Then, he kept Long Taiji's and the lone emperor's corpses. The former was a great venerable realm dragon, while the latter had the royal bloodline of the dragon clan. To him, they were of great use. Moreover, there were some things that he wanted to verify. However, just as Su Yu was cleaning up the lone emperor's corpse, the dragon's body started to burn without warning. It was a layer of purplish-black demonic flames. Su Yu accidentally came into contact with it, and it immediately burned his whole body, burning him to ashes. In a short span of a breath, he was burned to death. The flames on the lone emperor's corpse formed an extremely sinister face of the dragon clan. Seeing this face, the 10 giant dragons knelt down in fear, shouting in unison, "Greetings, Your Majesty the Dragon Emperor." The person who had manifested was none other than the Dragon Emperor. Of course, it was not the Dragon Emperor himself, but a shred of power that he had left in the lone emperor's body. When the lone emperor died, the hidden power would awaken and manifest. Atone for your sins with your death. The Dragon Emperor's tone was calm, but it was majestic. The 10 giant dragons were submissive. They raised their claws and smacked their heads, preparing to atone for their sins with their deaths. They had failed to protect the lone emperor, so they deserved the death penalty. However, at that moment, a cold voice came from the ashes that Su Yu had turned into. "Your lives are mine. Am I the only one who can kill you?" Swoosh! A strong life force rose from the ashes, turning into a brand new Su Yu. The 10 giant dragons came to their senses. Indeed, things were different now. They had completely abandoned the dragon clan and chosen to serve Su Yu. What was the point of obeying the Dragon Emperor's decree? Chapter 2382. One by one, the giant dragons came to their senses and put down their dragon claws. This incident was all caused by the lonely emperor himself. His death had nothing to do with them. Why should they die to atone for his sins? You've all grown bold. The Dragon Emperor's flaming giant face shook. The 10 giant dragons were silent, not daring to refute or even look the Dragon Emperor in the eye. The Dragon Emperor glanced at them coldly, then looked up at Su Yu. He said indifferently, "Have you come back to life? Or am I seeing things?" He had clearly sensed that Su Yu's life had been extinguished. Why did he suddenly come back to life? It doesn't matter. What matters is that if you have something to say, then say it. If not, then scram. Su Yu said coldly. The Dragon Emperor would not speak without thinking. Young human, you have 2 choices. One is to join the Dragon Clan, and the other is for me to hunt you down. Which one will you choose? The Dragon Emperor said simply. Joining the dragon race sounded good, but in reality, was there a need to ask what the outcome would be if one really joined? How would he be treated when he had a close relationship with the royal family of the previous dynasty, cultivated the evil dragon Bible, and killed the #1 genius of the dragon clan? Death might not be the worst outcome. I won't choose either, Su Yu said calmly. He had dared to rob the 3rd ancestor's belongings, so why would he fear the Dragon Emperor? The Dragon Emperor nodded slightly. I understand. I will personally hunt you down and kill you until you die without a burial place. As he finished speaking, the flames disappeared. Finally, the Dragon Emperor's vague warning sounded. Remember what I said. Puff. The flames were extinguished, leaving only the Dragon Emperor's words floating in the air. Su Yu did not take it seriously. He led the 10 giant dragons away from the place. The commotion just now was too great, and it was not safe to stay here any longer. Little did he know, in a secret chamber far away in the Tai Chi civilization, as a member of the Cauldron, Princess Linglong of the Dragon Clan was sitting cross-legged in meditation. Princess Linglong had nourished her soul with Princess Rooken's body. Just as she was cultivating, she suddenly opened her eyes, which were filled with astonishment. An ice crystal appeared in her body. The terrifying power of a Tao Lord flowed out from within the ice crystal, and it madly fused with his body. This is... Princess Linglong was in disbelief. This is the curse on Su Yu's body. It has absorbed the power of some almighty dragon. How is this possible? She was full of bewilderment, but she couldn't afford to be distracted. How could an ordinary body possibly endure the powerful energy of a Tao Lord? Myriad dragons' ingestion of water. At the critical moment, Princess Linglong executed a secret technique of the royal family and quickly digested the power of the Tao Master that descended from the sky. His body was changing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Layers of crystal skin peeled off from his body. The aura emanating from his body was like a golden silkworm breaking out of its cocoon, rising rapidly. The commotion attracted many experts from the primal chaos civilization. When they sensed the majestic power of a Tao Lord, all of them were shocked. After an entire day had passed, Princess Linglong slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were filled with surprise and regret. What surprised her was that with the help of those Tao Lords, she had successfully recovered to the peak of her cultivation and reached the perfect state of forgetting words. Regrettably, the power was too immense. She only had time to absorb 1/10 of it. The remaining 9/10 were all wasted. Otherwise, she could have broken through to the later stage of the fish dragon realm. Princess Linglong, congratulations! The King of Darkness was the first to arrive. He was deeply surprised. Princess Linglong didn't take it to heart. She looked into the distance thoughtfully. The one who should be thanked is Su Yu. She had never thought that the life and death curse that she had placed on Su Yu to save her life would one day bring her a great opportunity. What was even more unexpected was that Su Yu's current enemy was already at the level of a fish dragon realm master. It had only been 30 years since they last met, and he had already become so powerful. On the other side, in a dark galaxy, a gloomy young man crushed a 6-star civilization with a kick. That civilization was the one that Su Yu passed by when he fought with the second clone of Xiaoyao, son of heaven. With a kick from the young man, a civilization that had existed for an entire era was easily crushed as if it was made of mud. In the blink of an eye, all the creatures on it were destroyed in the sudden disaster. Damn it, where is he hiding? The young man was none other than the second clone of Xiaoyao, son of heaven. After more than 10 years, he had finally found the vicinity. However, he couldn't pinpoint Su Yu's exact location. Filled with resentment, he casually kicked a nearby civilization to vent his anger and destroyed it. Right at this moment, Xiaoyao, son of heaven, seemed to sense something and looked toward the border of the west region. Immediately, a hint of disdain appeared at the corner of his mouth. I was wondering where the ancestral level power came from. It turns out to be the pests of the last era. He couldn't be bothered to pay attention to them. However, the appearance of the ancestral level power made him speculate. That little saint carries the expectations of the world and has always been blessed with opportunities. Xiaoyao, son of heaven, said thoughtfully. Looking at the time, it should be when the 8-star civilizations recruited the extraterrestrial creatures, right? That kid shouldn't miss it. Then, he closed his eyes as if he was receiving some kind of message. After a while, he raised his eyes and looked toward the east region. All right, I will wait for you there. Boom. Heaven and earth collapsed. Xiaoyao, son of heaven, left in a flash, setting off a gale that blew away groups of civilizations. Several days later, a group of mighty strong men from the shore civilization finally caught up with the aura of the Dragon Clan. They were already mentally prepared for a battle to the death. However, when they arrived near a civilization at the border of the South region, they were all shocked when they saw the scene on the ground. Giant dragon corpses were lying coldly in the void. Judging from their wounds, they were all killed by a magnificent and matchless power. They were killed with one strike, without exception. Near the corpses, there was a weak ancestral-level power that made them shudder before they even got close. Who did it? The master of the 1,000 insects civilization gasped. It was easy to kill a celestial being realm dragon, but to kill so many of them with one strike, even the South Pole immortal could not do it. Everyone was shocked as they stared at the horrifying scene. Among them, only the divine flame female demonic demon knew who did it. Apart from that senior, no one could easily kill dozens of giant dragons like they were bugs, right? The senior finally made a move, the divine flame female demonic demon said. Thinking of the senior's disdain for the dragon clan, she felt very helpless. The dragon clan really provoked someone they shouldn't have. Really, of all people, why did they have to capture the senior's disciples woman? Wasn't this asking for death in the middle of the night? The divine flame female demonic demon's eyes turned, and she immediately pounced forward while the others were still distracted and collected the 5 giant dragon corpses. These were all celestial being realm dragon corpses, and their materials were extremely precious. Normally, they would not even be able to think about it. Only at this moment could she obtain 8 of them. The South Pole immortal hermit also came to his senses and joined in the fight. However, all the other powerful beings also came to their senses and joined in. Thus, he only managed to obtain 5, and the rest were divided among the powerful beings. Because of this, a lot of internal strife broke out among the various forces, and they all fought with each other. Fortunately, the South Pole immortal hermit and the divine flame female demonic demon were able to suppress the situation and calm the chaos. Let me see what happened. The South Pole immortal hermit's beard fluttered in the wind as he waved his sleeves as if he was painting. Wisps of lost aura gathered from nearby and formed an image in the air. When the image appeared, many of the Western region mighty figures felt their scalps go numb. In the image, dozens of giant dragons were fleeing in panic. Behind them, in the boundless darkness, there was a blurry figure covered in blood, as if it had crawled out from hell. Who is that person? How could he chase after so many dragons alone? To be precise, Long Taiji is also being chased. The South Pole immortal hermit's expression was unprecedentedly grave. The South Pole immortal hermit, who had fought with him personally, knew how terrifying Long Taiji was. However, someone as powerful as him was being chased by a man shrouded in blood? There is such an unparalleled demon in the Western region? Someone mistakenly thought that Suyu was from the demonic path. The demonic path in the Western region was not flourishing, and no one had ever heard of such a terrifying demonic path. Could it be Mo Qinglong from the northern region? Among the eastern, southern, western, and northern regions, the demonic path in the northern region was the most prosperous. Among them, the most famous one was Mo Qinglong, who was known as the #1 demon in the northern region. It was rumored that Mo Qinglong's abilities were earth-shattering, and he was comparable to the Dragon Emperor. Only if he personally attacked could he chase after Long Taiji and the others, causing them to flee in panic. The recruitment of the 8-star civilizations is imminent, and the unparalleled Almighties are coming one after another. What an eventful time! A master of civilization exclaimed. The South Pole immortal hermit frowned slightly. Was that blood shadow really Mo Qinglong? Mo Qinglong had never left the northern region, so why would he appear without warning, and even chase after the Dragon Clan? However, the most important thing now was to find the disciples who had been captured. The crowd dispersed and found the bound disciples in the nearby civilizations. Apart from 2 of them who had died tragically, the others were all safe and sound. Some masters of civilization tried to ask them if they knew anything, but none of them could answer. They could only feel the terrifying fluctuations of the battle, but they did not know who was fighting with the dragon clan. However, a piece of information appeared, causing all the forces to become excited. "Master, it seems like that person is here for junior sister Qin." Hai Qingxiao's face was a little pale. The South Pole immortal hermit's eyes flashed. "Explain clearly." Thus, Hai Qingxiao told him about Qin Xianer being burned to death, and the sudden appearance of that person. "Where is Qin Xianer?" The South Pole immortal hermit looked around, only to find that Qin Xianer was nowhere to be found. The rest of the forces were also shocked. Mo Qinglong was here for Qin Xianer of the South Pole Immortal Palace? It was obvious what that meant. "Search for Qin Xianer with everything we have." The South Pole Immortal Hermit's heart was moved. Regardless of whether that person shrouded in blood shadow was Mo Qinglong or not, as long as he could use Qin Xianer and pull her to his side, she would be a peerless help. Instantly, everyone from the South Pole civilization spread out to search for Qin Xianer. 2 days later, someone finally found Qin Xianer, who was still recovering from her injuries, in a certain abandoned place. When the South Pole Immortal Hermit heard the news, he personally rushed over and asked about her well-being. Chapter 2383. Xianer, who is the senior who saved you? South Pole Immortal Wang asked in a pleasant manner. Is senior referring to Su Yu? She didn't understand why they had mistaken Su Yu for a senior, but it was obvious that Su Yu was fine. His heart, which had been hanging in the air, was finally at ease. I finally have a chance to apologize to him face to face. Qin Xianer was looking forward to seeing Su Yu again. Xianer, can't you tell me? Seeing that Qin Xianer didn't reply, the South Pole Immortal Old Man asked kindly. Qin Xianer shook her head. I don't know who you are either. She knew that it would be best not to expose Su Yu. Hearing this, the leaders of the 4 forces were disappointed. The South Pole Immortal One also felt that it was a pity. It seemed that the relationship between Qin Xianer and the man shrouded in bloody shadows was not deep. At least, not as much as they had imagined. Alright, that's all. Follow me back to the shore civilization, South Pole Immortal Hermit said expressionlessly. Among them, the one who felt the most relieved was Tai Bufan, the eldest senior brother. He was afraid that the South Pole Immortal One would put Qin Xianer in an important position because of that mysterious senior. So it was a false alarm. Junior Sister Qin, it seems like you can't change your fate. Tai Bufan stared at Qin Xianer as pity flashed in his eyes. The South Pole Immortal One had never been a kind person, and he would never save her for no reason. He had his own intentions, but he had been hiding it from Qin Xianer, who was completely unaware of it. The crowd returned one after another. Apart from the divine flame demonic woman and the others, no one else knew that Su Yu had been here before. In a certain remote small civilization in the southern region, 10 colossal dragons were standing guard outside. Inside was a spatial isolation formation. Within the formation, Su Yu was calculating his gains and losses. The biggest gain was naturally Qin Xianer's safety. Just this alone made any losses insignificant. Next were Long Taiji's body and heart. What he lost was 100 drops of Dragon Emperor blood and 4 drops of Insect Ancestor blood essence. The former was still manageable, but the latter was irreparable. Of the 10 drops of blood essence, only 3 were left. As a life-saving treasure, the Insect Ancestor's blood essence must be used cautiously in the future. After taking a look at Long Taiji's corpse in the space ring, Su Yu tried to retrieve the dragon's blood. Unfortunately, he only took out 1,000 drops. This was because most of the essence in his body had been devoured by the lone Emperor's nirvana of the ancestral dragon. Su Yu tried to integrate 1,000 drops of the dragon's blood into his body. As a result, the blood essence was just enough to cover the 100 drops of the Dragon Emperor's blood that he had lost previously. A difference of 10 times? Su Yu stroked his chin. The gap between the Dragon Emperor and Long Taiji seems to be larger than I imagined. Long Taiji was a late-stage venerable. As for the Dragon Monarch, Just his blood essence was 10 times stronger than Long Taiji's. Just how powerful was his strength? Perfected great venerable realm? Or would he surpass the yellow Daolord and enter the ranks of the profound Daolords? Ancestral Dragon's Nirvana, isn't this technique a little too heaven-defying? Suyu furrowed his brows. The Dragon Emperor had grown to become the strongest man in the southern region in such a short period of time, and he even claimed to be the strongest man in the outer regions. It was obvious how powerful the ancestral dragon's nirvana was. He even saw the lone emperor's cultivation level skyrocket after he cast the ancestral dragon's nirvana. The heavenly law is constant and there are gains and losses. Such a drastic increase in cultivation should have a great drawback, Suyu muttered to himself. If that wasn't the case, why would the lone emperor only use this secret technique at the critical moment? With a thought, Suyu summoned the evil dragon. "My friend, what can I do for you?" the evil dragon asked. Suddenly, he noticed the 10 giant dragons beside Suyu and was shocked. Suyu pondered for a moment before asking, "Do you know the Dragon Abyss Treasure Scroll, a secret technique of the Dragon Clan's royal family?" The surprised evil dragon's face suddenly turned serious and solemn. "Of course I do. Why do you ask?" Suyu then told him about the lone emperor's transformation. Although the evil dragon's cultivation level was low, he knew a lot about the Dragon Clan's secrets. He said, "My friend, you don't have to be so surprised. The ancestral dragon's nirvana is a forbidden technique, and the user usually can't live for more than a year after casting it." A year? The price was indeed too high. A year's time was just a snap of the fingers for such a powerful man. Wait, what's going on with the Dragon Emperor? Why is he still alive after cultivating the ancestral dragon's nirvana? Suyu asked again. The evil dragon shook his head with certainty. He's definitely not cultivating the ancestral dragon's nirvana. After thinking about it carefully, Suyu also felt that there was a big problem. If the Dragon Emperor really cultivated this technique, why was his cultivation still at the peak of the great venerable realm? After days and months of devouring, he must have reached an unimaginably terrifying level. The Dragon Emperor is really mysterious, Suyu muttered. The evil dragon's eyes flickered as he said, "You obtained the heart of a great venerable dragon? If that's true, I think it might be able to help you cultivate the Sky Dragon's body to a higher level." Currently, Suyu's Sky Dragon's body was only at the intermediate level, and he was still a long way from reaching the higher level. How do I do it? Suyu was even more puzzled. The evil dragon was just an ordinary dragon at the Emperor realm. How could he know so many secrets? It's very simple. You just need to use the evil dragon's rebirth secret technique from the Evil Dragon Bible to succeed, the evil dragon said. However, apart from that, you also need to obtain the complete skeleton of 100 giant dragons. Suyu frowned slightly. A complete skeleton of a dragon was easy to obtain, but where could he find 100? Every generation of the Dragon Clan has a place where the remains of dragons are buried, and it's called the Divine Dragon Cemetery, the evil dragon said. If you want to find 100 giant dragon skeletons, you can only go to the Divine Dragon Cemetery. Suyu fell silent. Putting aside the fact that he hated stealing corpses, the consequences of trespassing into the Divine Dragon Cemetery with his current identity were enough to make him cautious. As if seeing through Suyu's thoughts, the evil dragon chuckled. "If there's really no other way, you can go to the Divine Dragon battlefield to try your luck." The 10 giant dragons around them cast surprised looks at the evil dragon. This dragon seemed to know a lot. The Divine Dragon battlefield wasn't a place that everyone knew about. Most of the dragons didn't even know of its existence. What is that place? If it was on the battlefield, there would be nothing to be afraid of. The evil dragon said, "It's in the northernmost part of the southern region. That was the place where the previous Dragon Emperor hunted down the epic-making dragons. The number of dead dragons was no less than 10,000. Most of them have been taken away by the dragons, but some of them are buried deeper, or they were left there for some special reasons. Su Yu's eyes flickered. That place must be very dangerous, right? If there was no risk, it would have been dug up by those who knew about it. The most dangerous thing is the remains themselves. They have evolved into skeletal dragons over the years. If you accidentally awaken them, it will be very dangerous. The evil dragon seemed to know that place like the back of its hand. The weakest skeletal dragon is at the celestial realm, and the strongest is probably at the great venerable realm. Su Yu's eyes narrowed. There were even great venerables. In his current condition, it was best not to fight head-on with beings at the great venerable realm. How you decide is up to you, the evil dragon said as it handed the coordinates of the divine dragon battlefield to Su Yu, then returned to the space storage device. Su Yu was deep in thought. The cemetery might be easier, but he wasn't willing to do that. Let's go to the battlefield, Su Yu said as he stood up. However, the 10 giant dragons behind him hesitated. One of the giant dragons at the later stage of the celestial realm said hesitantly, "Master, the battlefield is the forbidden land of the dragons. Those who enter rarely come back alive. Besides," it stared at the space storage device where the evil dragon was. "Besides, that evil dragon doesn't look like an ordinary dragon to me. At least, an ordinary dragon wouldn't be able to master the evil dragon Bible. This scripture is the greatest treasure of the dragons, second only to the dragon abyss treasure scroll. Many years ago, it was taken away by the first guardian of the dragons, Long Feun. Why would it appear in the hands of a small evil dragon? Master, you'd better not believe the words of this dragon." In fact, even without their reminder, Su Yu had sensed that something was amiss. From the moment the evil dragon had crafted the evil king pearl, Su Yu had been suspicious. Don't use people you doubt. Since Su Yu had decided to follow the evil dragon's suggestion, he shouldn't be afraid. Let's go. The 10 giant dragons had no choice but to follow Su Yu toward the divine dragon battlefield. 2 years later, at the northernmost part of the dragon clan, both the civilization and the void were filled with a thick, cold air. The civilizations were all frozen into ice, as if they were wrapped in silver. There were no living creatures in the civilizations, and the void was dead silent. From the distribution of the civilizations, one could see how prosperous the river of civilization had been. However, for some unknown reason, the place was filled with cold air, making the civilizations uninhabitable. In the end, they were abandoned and became abandoned. This is the divine dragon battlefield. If we go deeper, it will be the territory of the skeletal dragons. A giant dragon stared into the dark depths of the universe, its voice filled with unspeakable fear. No one knew how many skeletal dragons remained in the darkness. All they knew was that from ancient times until now, very few of those who entered the battlefield survived. After thinking about it, Su Yu said, "Hide in the nearby civilizations and don't reveal your auras. I will go alone." During the 2 years, he had secretly communicated with the evil dragons. These skeletal dragons were very sensitive to the auras of the dragon race. If 10 living giant dragons entered the area where the skeletal dragons roamed, they would immediately be alerted. Therefore, it would be inconvenient to bring them along. It was better for Su Yu to go alone. Whoosh, Su Yu entered the incomparably deep darkness without making a sound. The deeper he went, the colder the cold air became. The darkness in front of him grew deeper, and he could not even see his fingers in front of him. Su Yu had no choice but to use his transparent eye to break through the darkness and see the scene in front of him clearly. Su Yu was shocked by what he saw. It turned out that just 30 feet in front of him, there was a huge, snow-white mountain ridge in front of him. He had almost collided with it. Looking up, Su Yu realized that it was the remains of a giant dragon that was tens of thousands of feet long. What was slightly different was that the remains of the giant dragon seemed to be alive. Its entire body expanded and shrank as it breathed. Skeletal dragon. Su Yu immediately realized. The aura that was faintly emanating from its body shocked Suyu. Later stage of celestial realm. Suyu held his breath, afraid that he would cause a commotion and wake it up. The first skeletal dragon he had discovered was at the later stage of celestial realm. He carefully took out a bright red rope and wrapped it around the skeletal dragon bit by bit. Although the rope was thin, it was personally crafted by the evil dragon to restrain skeletal dragons.